The president of Korea announces the impending end of the world following a catastrophe in Japan, where an asteroid impact releases a virus that transforms the population into voracious zombies. As the apocalypse commences, widespread panic breaks out, leaving the public paralyzed with confusion regarding where to seek safety. However, one individual, Seung-ho, is fully prepared for this disaster. He possesses a secure sanctuary in an alternate dimension and has been anticipating the opportunity to combat the undead. Several months prior, Seung-ho and his friends participated in Sura, a virtual reality survival game known for its extreme difficulty. The game was so challenging that the majority of its player base eventually quit. Seung-ho was abandoned by his party members, who betrayed him by never logging in again. Consequently, he continued to play and stream the game solo, defeating various monsters and rising to become the top-ranked player. Eventually, growing weary of this lifestyle, he removed his gaming gear and deleted his public stream archives. Focusing on his career as a chef, Seung-ho developed an interest in a specific female customer. In a moment of playfulness, he vocalized the command for a status window in the real world and was shocked to see an actual blue interface manifest before his eyes. The screen displayed his statistics, identical to those from the game, with one exception, a new skill labeled Private Portal. Upon testing this new ability, Seung-ho summoned a warp gate large enough for a human to pass through. He struggled to process the dangerous implications of this discovery, realizing that if elements of the game were manifesting in reality, the meteor responsible for starting the apocalypse must also be approaching. Searching the internet, he frantically discovered an article predicting the asteroid's impact. Despite this, he remained in denial that the game's events were unfolding in real life. Staring at the portal, he acknowledged that the combination of the asteroid report and the existence of the gate confirmed something was terribly wrong. He hesitated, debating whether he should enter the portal. Lacking superpowers, a romantic partner, a plan, or funds, he considered taking the risk. Ultimately, after some reflection, he picked up a nearby ladle and inserted it into the portal to gauge what lay on the other side. After retrieving a scoop of soil, he realized the destination was not a labyrinth level from the game. While this was a positive sign, he began to wonder if the portal merely transported him to a different location on Earth. Having packed supplies for the journey, he motivated himself to finally step through. Once inside, Seung-ho discovered a beautiful landscape completely devoid of urban structures. He immediately noticed that the climate was significantly colder than what he was accustomed to. Checking his phone and finding no signal, he deduced that he was trapped in an isolated region far from civilization. Realizing the severity of his potential isolation, he took out a marker and labeled a nearby tree with the number 0. Marking the tree proves to be a strategic decision, ensuring he does not lose his bearings during the exploration. He begins his trek, but the physical exertion quickly takes a toll on him. The forest seems limitless, with no end in sight. Just as he begins to wish for something interesting to happen, a creature nearby fixes its gaze upon him. Suddenly, it leaps forward with predatory speed, terrifying the protagonist. Fortunately, the animal reveals itself to be a stunning valley deer rather than a carnivorous monster. Notably, the system automatically identifies the unique creature, providing confirmation that this location is indeed a realm separate from Earth. The deer stares at him briefly before bolting away in silence. Seung-ho finds the creature's abrupt departure strange, but he is relieved by its lack of aggression. However, he acknowledges that his situation could become dire if he were to encounter violent animals like monkeys or boars. Another significant detail is that the valley deer never existed in the Sura game. Upon his arrival, he develops a strong intuition that this realm operates on survival mechanics. Wielding a blade, he advances, steeling himself against anything that might jump out at him. Up to this point, he has remained in denial regarding the disaster heading to end humanity. But just as he is about to give up, he makes a discovery. He spots a glowing sun apple, a mystical fruit, and plucks it from a tree. After briefly wondering if it is safe to eat, he takes a bite and experiences an immediate transformation. The system notifies him that his stamina has been restored as his body emits a golden radiance, replicating the exact effects of the sun apple juice from the game. With this final confirmation, he is fully convinced that a terrible event is imminent. Additionally, he notices he is standing near goblin feces, indicating he must exercise extreme caution. Seung-ho sighs anxiously, attempting to boost his morale, but despite his earlier skepticism, he now accepts that the end of the world is approaching. After experiencing the portal's effects, He exits the gate and returns to his original world to brainstorm solutions. He is determined to be ready for the coming apocalypse. His first step is to review all his gameplay footage and store it on a personal hard drive. Conveniently, having streamed every session allows him to easily access this data, a resource he never anticipated using for such a purpose. News reaches him regarding the asteroid's impact. The destruction of Japan is scheduled to begin in 32 days, marking the start of the apocalypse. He decides to use this time to prepare, knowing that the game was plagued by incredibly harsh mechanics. The most absurd and problematic of these features was a condition known as the Iron Death Disease. This specific phenomenon caused the corrosion and destruction of every piece of metal on Earth. Buildings crumbled into dust, inadvertently aiding the zombie swarm just hours after the event occurred. With the obliteration of metal in modern society, humanity was effectively sent back to the Stone Age. Although the Iron Death Disease eventually subsided within the game, the primary issue was that it persisted for a full year. However, the approaching plague did not concern the protagonist much, as he possessed a secure workaround via his private portal, a benefit of his recently obtained trait. Seung-ho operates under the strong assumption that the disease cannot traverse the portal. Concluding his analysis, he gathers all his savings to purchase high-grade equipment. Since he's effectively about to enter a real-life zombie survival scenario, he acquires all necessary gear and provisions. That night, while browsing online forums, Seung-ho feels disappointed seeing the few individuals who are misusing their awakened powers for crime and self-indulgence. When morning arrives, he purchases additional supplies to support his upcoming mission. On his return trip, he also buys a hunting bow as a precaution. Amidst these preparations, he faces a realization, wondering if he might be overthinking the situation. He considers that perhaps he is getting ahead of himself and acting too rashly. Nevertheless, he reasons that he can eventually earn back his savings even if his fears prove unfounded. With his errands finished, he returns home and places a closing sign on his shop. While deep in thought, he is suddenly interrupted by a voice. A woman resembling Cha Hae-in from Solo Leveling asks with concern regarding the shop's closure. He informs her that it is merely for remodeling, leading her to speculate if he has struck it big and earned a lot of money. Seung-ho attempts to end the conversation by claiming he has work to do, but she abruptly stops him to ask something. However, she becomes flustered and fails to articulate her request, turning around to leave instead. Although curious about what she wanted to ask, and aware he could have pressed for an answer, Seung-ho returns to his business. Inside, he vows to focus seriously on matters of importance, effectively choosing to ignore distractions to fully concentrate on his goals. He commands the portal to open while reflecting on his gaming playstyle. He could be described as a playmaker or strategist, someone who enjoys utilizing tactics to clear stages. He was not a particularly powerful fighter, relying mostly on his intellect. The reason for this is simple. In Sura, gaining stats is a complex process. Stats are not acquired merely by leveling up. They are obtained only through hunting and exploration. Currently, Seung-ho is in the other realm attempting to refine his archery skills. Lacking prior practice or instruction, he utilizes YouTube tutorials to teach himself. He adopts the correct stance and aims the weapon. His in-game experience is reflected in his demeanor as he eventually releases the arrow. The arrow flies through the air and successfully strikes the target board. Seung-ho is genuinely surprised by his own natural talent, briefly entertaining the notion that he might be a chosen one. However, the soreness in his hand quickly brings him back to reality, revealing that his physical strength is a significant weakness. Consequently, he resolves to prioritize working out to improve his endurance. With his basic preparations complete, he proceeds to the next phase of his plan. He identifies two immediate priorities: formulating a proper strategy for hunting monsters and constructing a secure home base for supply storage. Unfortunately, he is currently without weapons or provisions, as his orders are still in transit. In the meantime, he occupies himself by hunting for golden apples, finding an abundance of them through sheer luck. After marking several locations, he focuses on mentally preparing for the approaching apocalypse. This dedication to early preparation mirrors the strategy that allowed him to survive in Sura for so long. While scanning the area, Seung-ho discovers goblin excrement. He had been specifically searching for this sign with a particular theory in mind. Since goblins typically move in packs, the presence of a single, isolated pile of waste suggests that a solitary goblin is nearby. Examining the evidence, he deduces that the creature is likely an outcast. Seung-ho recognizes this lone goblin as a perfect opportunity to gain experience, essentially a golden ticket, and resolves to hunt it down. As night falls, he continues his search. The sound of howling wolves indicates he is nearing the valley, and shortly after, he spots the very goblin he had been tracking. Concealing himself behind a tree, Sung-ho observes that the creature is identical to its in-game counterpart. Although goblins are considered the lowest tier of monsters, usually armed only with spears and poison darts, they are infamous for torturing and mutilating their victims. This brutal nature is precisely why Sung-ho opted for a long-range weapon like a bow as his primary tool. Observing closely, he notes that the goblin appears old and is in poor physical condition. Seeing that it is unarmed, Sung-ho immediately readies his bow. He understands that maintaining his composure is key to securing the kill. He releases the arrow, which pierces the goblin's arm. Although he had aimed for the head, he is satisfied with the result. Attempting to capitalize on the injury, he prepares a second shot. However, the goblin reacts with surprising speed, throwing a stone with enough force to knock the bow from Sung-ho's hands. He realizes then that he is facing a mature and experienced combatant. Both adversaries prepare for close-quarters combat. Sung-ho readies his knife and attempts to slash at the goblin's flank. The experienced monster dodges the attack and delivers a hard blow to Sung-ho's kneecap. Escalating the fight, Sung-ho tackles the creature, forcing it onto its back on the ground. In this position, he holds a distinct advantage. Sung-ho drives the blade deep into the creature's chest, eliciting a scream of agony. Eventually, the light fades from its eyes. The first kill is a success, rewarding him with 2 points. He is momentarily stunned, struggling to believe that he actually managed to pull it off. Scanning the surroundings, he locates guaca powder and vegetable oil nearby. He recalls that in the game, combining these ingredients creates a healing ointment. However, his immediate priority is to dig a grave quickly. It is far too dangerous to leave the goblin corpse exposed, as the rest of the pack could discover it and track him down. Furthermore, abandoning the body is ill-advised because it could transform into a monster known as a bone creeper. Sung-ho then notices a pair of red trouts nearby. His heart begins to race as he realizes he is in grave danger. The moment he shifts his gaze, he spots a terrifying owl-like monster looming over him. The narrative briefly shifts back to Sung-ho's past as a player. During his live streams, he compiled significant insights into the game. Responding to donations from viewers who wanted deep dives into the lore, Sung-ho had thoroughly analyzed and explained his experiences with goblins and kobolds. While avoiding bone creepers was essential, he noted that the forest harbored 2 of the game's deadliest creatures, werewolves and owlbears. Owlbears are known to be highly territorial, playing a vital role in maintaining the balance of the monster ecosystem. Recalling his streaming days brings a sense of warmth to Sung-ho. He remembers a specific viewer named Bull Sungman who was always supportive. Other viewers were relaxed but eccentric, such as one individual who persistently typed barking sounds in the chat. Sung-ho finds it strange that these pleasant memories are surfacing now. He wonders if it is a reaction to facing a creature of pure horror that threatens to end his life. Refusing to succumb to the situation, he interprets these memories as a signal to focus. Utilizing every second, he attempts to formulate a plan, well aware that owlbears are vicious predators capable of ripping apart anything in their path. The creature's lack of immediate movement suggests it might not be particularly hungry at the moment. However, the most concerning factor is that they have trespassed into the territory of the red trout. Weighing all these variables, Sung-ho concludes there is likely only one method to escape this nightmare. Pivoting to run, he reminds himself that mentally, he is still the expert player known as Kimbap Joa, even if his physical form is limited to the weaker physique of Kang Sung-ho. Gritting his teeth, Sung-ho challenges the monster, issuing a final declaration of his will to survive. The creature stares him down before initiating a terrifying first attack. While the owlbear is an exceptional nocturnal hunter, its primary weakness is direct sunlight. Having memorized the creature's attack patterns from the game, Sung-ho knows that proper execution is the only way to save his life. Matching the timing of the beast's strike, he executes a perfect evasion of the slash, while simultaneously devising a way to create a light source to frighten the monster. Bursting with speed, he sprints up the creature's massive arm before finally whipping out a flashlight and blinding its eyes at point-blank range. This effect is so traumatic for a predator like the owlbear that it is rendered completely blind. The scene shifts to the protagonist lying in bed as his alarm rings. He knows he must get up, even though his body is incredibly sore from the previous night's events. Seung-ho had passed out immediately after returning home, with his last memory being his desperate flight after blinding the monster. As luck would have it, he had encountered the owlbear immediately after dealing with the goblin. Not wanting to deal with any more trouble, he attempts to rise to get something to eat. However, he falls to the floor with a thud, realizing that his legs are completely incapacitated from the excessive cardio. Fortunately, he still possesses the golden apples from the other realm. Seung-ho grabs one and takes a bite, instantly rejuvenating his stamina through its magical effects. Finally feeling more alive than ever, he decides to go out and properly satisfy his hunger. After cleaning himself up, he runs into Mikyung again. She had come to a different restaurant to eat and coincidentally encountered him. Although Seung-ho was not looking for company, she sits with him because she prefers having a meal partner. She hurriedly asks him if he has tried opening the status window. Her enthusiastic attitude makes Seung-ho realize that this was the topic she wanted to discuss previously, but had hesitated to mention. Mikyung shows him a news report to assure him that the phenomenon is real, noting that some awakened players are already using their powers to steal money from others. Seung-ho is slightly startled by her confidence in asking such a direct question. He responds by lying, telling her that nothing appeared for him. Seung-ho feels that keeping others in the dark about his status is the right move. His trait is strategic rather than combat-focused, meaning it is something he should utilize for his own advantage rather than sharing with others. At this moment, not even his personal safety is guaranteed. He reasons that if he reveals his hand to her, likening the situation to the danger of the lady in the red dress, things could end badly for him. It is a calculated, strategic play. However, he remains intrigued as to why Mikyung is showing such intense interest in the subject of awakening. Then, she surprises him. She hesitates before admitting that she had lied about something. Seung-ho assumes she has good intentions and reassures her that she is under no obligation to explain herself. He offers her words of encouragement, suggesting that there is still time before heading home shortly after their conversation concludes. Finally, his delivery packages arrive. The supplies he ordered have been delivered, alleviating his concerns about resources. He moves the bulk of the items to the rooftop, storing only the essential goods on the second floor. While preparing, he selects various items required for the day's objective, including gas masks, suits, and other necessary equipment. For this mission, he intends to secure a suitable location to serve as a hideout. Establishing a home base is crucial, which explains why he has equipped himself with an axe. Stepping through the portal, Seung-ho pursues his first lead. While previously searching for the elderly goblin, he had accidentally stumbled upon a cave. Remembering its coordinates, he travels to that exact spot and locates it. It appears to be a convenient hiding spot, perfectly suited for his plans. However, he first needs to verify which types of monsters inhabit the area. Scanning the surroundings, Seung-ho identifies the tiny footprints of kobolds. This discovery is cause for celebration, as these creatures pose very little threat. Since he arrived with a pre-formulated strategy against low-level monsters, he has no reason to worry. Kobolds are nocturnal creatures, meaning they are currently asleep. Consequently, his plan is to suffocate them while they remain inside the cave. First, he gathers firewood by cutting branches and piles the collection at the entrance. Next, he prepares to douse the wood with gasoline. Seung-ho anticipates clearing the mission without difficulty, believing all that remains is to light the fire. However, he is shocked to hear noises from within. The creatures awake from their slumber and immediately lock eyes with him, viewing him as their next meal. Seung-ho offers them a gentle greeting before swinging his axe and lunging into action. With a single, simple swing, he slashes both monsters across their necks, killing them instantly. Their drowsiness contributes to their quick defeat. Thanks to these consecutive kills, the system rewards him with a level increase and 4 points. Next, Seung-ho tosses the lighter onto the firewood. Shortly after, smoke fumes begin to drift into the cave. In the Sura game, low-level monsters possessed a glaring weakness, a vulnerability to unfamiliar phenomena such as this smoke. He waits outside wearing a gas mask. Although he could have attempted to burn them directly, this method is more effective regarding the subsequent cleanup process. The slumbering kobolds wake up in a panic and rush outside to save themselves. Seung-ho intentionally chose this strategy to weaken their bodies and create confusion during their escape. His objective is to ambush them the moment they step outside, taking advantage of their weakened state to kill them all at once. Although he anticipated at least 5 enemies to emerge, Seung-ho is surprised to see only 4. This deviates from their standard pack size, which typically consists of 7 members. Targeting one of the kobolds, he instantly kills it, noting that only 3 now remain. The survivors rush toward him, attempting to launch a counterattack with their limited capabilities. However, he is fully prepared with his axe. Swinging the weapon with the force of a battering ram, he strikes them down. When another kobold attempts to attack, Seung-ho blinds it at point-blank range using a potent defensive spray. Before the creature can recover or react, he assists in severing its head. With only one opponent left, the protagonist stares down the leader, who trembles in fear. Establishing himself as the predator, he declares their end, promising to make good use of the hideout they are leaving behind. The slaughter finally concludes, leaving Seung-ho collapsed on the ground in fatigue. Despite the ease of the battle, his lack of stamina proves to be a significant drawback. He observes that the system statistics are identical to those in the game, including the debuff section regarding his exhausted state. The mechanic where status points do not automatically increase upon leveling up also remains consistent. Nevertheless, the level up is beneficial as it will eventually unlock access to the shop. Currently, his greatest advantage is possessing a private space. However, despite his desire for a clean environment, he is disappointed by the filth left behind by the kobolds. With the hideout secured, the cleaning operations commence. He is forced to clear out such a significant amount of waste that the task quickly becomes exhausting. The cleanup process feels particularly burdensome, especially immediately following a physical fight. Seung-ho curses the creatures for their unhygienic living conditions. Despite the mess, he is relieved to no longer worry about housing, now that he has a new home base. He utilizes the portal to return to his original world whenever he needs to dispose of the trash. While this method is a benefit, the cleaning process still consumes a vast amount of time. He is most surprised to discover how seamlessly items function between dimensions. He utilizes a pipe from one side and activates it on the other, astonishing himself with its effectiveness. After hours of effort, the cave finally glitters with cleanliness. His next tasks involve removing bloodstains and pouring concrete to facilitate storage. He considers the complexities of using mortar and sandwich panels for the construction. One positive aspect of the cave is its abundance of luminous and ignition stones. Although these are considered beginner-tier items in the game, the sheer quantity available is a significant advantage. Seung-ho decides he has a valid reason to properly mine the location once construction is complete. The following day, he feels physically drained. He has been working so hard daily that his body aches all over. Inspecting his arm, he is surprised to see the cuts he has endured. The items he collected from the other realm are resting on a nearby table, leading him to consider making an ointment. The method is straightforward. He mixes guaca powder and vegetable oil in equal ratios and stirs them together. The result is a low-level ointment suitable for basic healing. Thanks to his background as a chef, he finds the crafting process easy. Applying the ointment to his arm feels like a tangible step forward. However, Seung-ho is troubled by the realization that he may need to repeat this production process frequently in the future. He considers the idea of raising his stats by focusing on fundamental training, but he worries that the intense risk involved might kill him before the apocalypse even arrives. Although he acknowledges the dark humor in such a possibility, Seung-ho refuses to take that chance and instead considers utilizing a more convenient weapon, such as a gun. Suddenly, a realization strikes him. There is definitely something he could use. He recalls the game's background lore, which exists separately from the main storyline. The critical question remains whether this lore will apply to the impending real-world apocalypse. Organizing his thoughts, he hopes for these backstory events to manifest, as they would benefit him in unimaginable ways. With a new plan established, he heads to the rooftop to retrieve the construction materials he ordered. Opening the portal gate, he begins tossing the bags through to the other dimension one by one. After completing this, he gathers additional items and descends to the first floor. He is about to move a pile of packages when the same girl appears again. Seung-ho begins to wonder if she is becoming too comfortable with him. He addresses her directly, causing her some embarrassment. He assures her that he is simply busy with remodeling work, an explanation she accepts as the truth. However, she notes with surprise that he has missed his regular haircut, which he usually gets every 3 months. Seung-ho acknowledges this and realizes that a haircut would be practical for his upcoming explorations. Consequently, he stops his work and goes to her shop. At this moment, he looks unkempt with long hair. He instructs her to shave it all off, opting for a buzz cut. Surprised, she agrees to carry out his request. As she works, she is intrigued by how much broader Seung-ho's shoulders have become. He explains that he has been working out, while Mikyung discusses how the status windows are connected to survival life. She explains that awakeners are individuals who have played the game at least once. Throughout the conversation, Sungho feigns ignorance and nods in agreement, though he curiously asks about her source of information. Suddenly, a tattooed man enters the shop, announcing that he is there for new intelligence. Ironically, this man happens to be someone Sungho fought in the past, though their conflict was merely a singing competition. Sungho is annoyed to discover that this individual is her source of information. The blonde-haired man complains to her that a specific person deleted their streams and is hoarding information for themselves. The situation becomes awkward when he announces his intention to uncover that player's real-world location. Sungho pretends to be curious about who this mysterious person might be. Inhan explicitly drops the name Kimbap Joa, which was Sungho's username. This significantly complicates matters, as Sungho now realizes that people are genuinely hunting him down. Inhan pressures the young woman to be bold and join their team. Sungho finds the entire situation ridiculous, reflecting that the only reason he deleted the videos was simply because he was disappointed with the game. Sungho never had time to consider personal benefits. In contrast, the intruder is an arrogant pretender who boasts loudly. He even curses at Sungho for abandoning the community without publicly sharing his stream data, completely unaware that the very person he is hunting is sitting directly across from him. Sungho questions if this hostile reaction reflects the sentiment of the entire community. This leads him to wonder if he should alter his course and start sharing information. Sungho stands up to personally confront the man, Inhan, scolding him for ruining his haircut midway through the session. Inhan attempts to act tough, but Sungho glares at the shorter man with murderous intensity, ordering him to leave immediately unless he wishes to face further humiliation. Intimidated, the nuisance exits the shop as the stylist bids him farewell, visibly relieved. Noticing her distress, Sungho asks for her phone number, solely because he perceives the man as a genuine fool who might pose a risk to her safety. Back at home, Sungho looks sharp with his new haircut. He focuses on searching for his username on the forums. The results are alarming. The boards are inundated with profanity and insults directed at him. While scrolling through the endless hate, he eventually locates Inhan's username. The man used a pseudonym despite the site's verification options. His entire profile is filled with negative commentary regarding Sungho, embodying the spirit of a dedicated internet troll. Sungho shuts down his computer, deciding it is the only appropriate response. He is not mentally shaken, merely disappointed. However, a strange sense of calm washes over him as he commands the portal to open. He spends the next 2 days refining his hideout, focusing on mining and construction. He utilizes a pickaxe and spreads mortar mixed with water, smoothing it evenly each day. Once the work is complete, he steps outside to wait for the mortar to cure, gazing up at the lonely moon. Suddenly, he realizes he must respond to the injustice and cruelty he has witnessed. He is not a hero seeking a grand purpose. His ultimate goal is simply to survive and emerge victorious. Having made his resolution, he turns around and is immediately startled. A bone creeper is clanking toward him. Since Sungho is already agitated, he views the creature as a perfect target to vent his frustration. A loud explosion follows, engulfing everything in flames. When Sungho wakes up, he is covered in scratches, initially unsure of what just occurred. Then, the image of the bone creeper returns to his memory. He is baffled by how he managed to survive an explosion at such close range. However, the answer becomes clear. The moment he spotted the bone creeper, he anticipated it was about to detonate and immediately sprinted for safety. However, the detonation still catches up to him, the force of the blast knocking him unconscious, though failing to kill him. Nevertheless, his evasion attempt comes at a cost. Sungho's right side is riddled with puncture wounds. Gathering what little strength remains, he summons the status window for assistance. The system indicates that his stats have decreased due to his current physical condition. However, because the creature was destroyed in the blast, he is awarded points for its defeat. A ringing headache begins to overwhelm Sungho's senses. Using his final ounce of energy, he commands the portal to open. Upon arriving in the next scene, his immediate priority is treating his wounds. This process involves extracting the bone fragments embedded in his flesh, an excruciatingly painful task. Fortunately, the ointment proves effective, helping to staunch the bleeding. After applying further bandages and checking his condition, Sungho succumbs to unconsciousness, having reached his physical limit for the day. Dawn breaks the following morning, and he wakes up, feeling as though he is on the verge of death. Anxious about his recovery, he immediately opens the status window to check his health. The system indicates that he is in stable condition, which brings him relief. Rising, he ponders how the bone creeper managed to locate him in the first place. He acknowledges that the forest is vast, making it not unlikely for creatures to suddenly emerge from hiding. This realization alarms him, motivating him to focus on honing his perception stat to boost his detection abilities. In the game, the primary way to increase such stats is by using stat points acquired through hunting or exploration experience. Another method is to utilize equipment or weapons that provide statistical buffs to the user. The problem, however, is that Sura is an incredibly difficult game. Even obtaining simple stat-boosting items requires facing dangerous monsters significantly higher than one's own level, meaning he would have to battle hellish beasts just to secure a weapon. Additionally, skills can be unlocked after defeating monsters. High-level monsters specifically drop them based on certain conditions, though not every skill is suitable for every player. Consequently, Sungho contemplates a reliable method to acquire these stat-boosting items. He decides to review footage of the game's background lore. These background stories take place chronologically before the asteroid strikes Earth. This implies that visiting specific locations might yield special items before the actual apocalypse begins. While this is currently just a theory, Sungho knows he must eventually fight stronger monsters regardless. He spends the next few hours researching past data and identifies 3 critical locations where these background stories occurred. He identifies 3 potential events from the lore: the Russian ship, the hobgoblin, and one other scenario. Specifically, the Jiri Mountain Orc incident is the most immediate of the group. According to the game footage, the orc was discovered on the 26th, so Seungho determines he must depart on the 25th to locate it early. With his next mission established, Seungho grabs his phone and notices that Mikyung is calling him at a late hour. The scene shifts to a cafe where the two meet. She inquires about his condition, asking why he has chosen to wear a long-sleeved shirt despite the summer heat. Seungho realizes he must conceal his wounds and notes that she is far more observant than she initially appears. She assumes he is bothered by the earlier incident at the shop, but Seungho denies this. Relieved, she expresses how frightened she had felt during that encounter. Seungho reminds her of an incident from the previous winter where the same man caused trouble using an illegally modified tow truck and subsequently fought weaker individuals. He concludes that the man is simply a terrible human being. Mikyung is stunned by this news, as she had no prior intelligence on the man, but Seungho urges her to stay away from him. He then directly asks her why she invited him out. The young woman leans in close and reveals the secret that she is actually an awakener. Seungho is baffled as to why she would share such sensitive information with him. Playing along naturally, he feigns jealousy that he did not share her luck. She expresses guilt for having lied to him previously, but he assures her that it is fine. Concluding their meeting, he rises to leave. Seungho is pleased that she entrusted him with that information and admits that her words made him feel better. Before departing, he leaves a subtle clue by stating his interest in survival life, declaring his full intention to study the game. Upon returning home, Seungho admits that he feels genuinely happy to find people of good character like her. He browses the stores and ends up purchasing high-quality drones and a rental car for navigation. He then heads straight to bed to recover for the following day. The next day arrives. As soon as dawn breaks, he begins crafting materials to hunt the orc. At his home base, he crushes and refines ignition stones. These require precise handling, as an incorrect strike could cause them to flare up. Next, he focuses on the luminous stones. Although mining them is blinding due to their intense light, he persists because they are valuable. After grinding both types of stones, he creates a powder from them, completing the setup for his mission. Next, he mixes sugar, gasoline, and organic solvents. The final ingredient is a hardening agent to solidify the ignition stone mixture. Thanks to the flexible coordinates of his dimensional gate, he is able to set up a workspace without difficulty. Before departing, he packs all his luggage into the rental car, satisfied with his purchases. With his supplies secured, Seungho drives toward Jiri Mountain with the objective of hunting orcs. He arrives at the parking lot of the Yongsan-ri campground just before midnight, using the remaining time to engage in image training and ensure his equipment is secure. When the clock strikes 12 a.m., he initiates a full-scale search. 2 hours later, the rain intensifies, creating a mist that severely hampers visibility. Having already scouted the campground without success, he begins to wonder exactly where the orcs emerge from the earth. He speculates that the precursor phenomenon from the game might not manifest in reality, but his thoughts are abruptly cut off by a deafening roar. Panicking, he looks behind him toward the source of the sound and sees a dark, shadowy figure approaching. Seung-ho realizes this is an orc, but not a standard one. It is a red orc subspecies, which guarantees a skill drop upon defeat. He attempts to compose himself while igniting a firecracker. He reasons that if everything proceeds according to his plan, he can definitely take the creature down. His strategy for dealing with the orc is straightforward. The first step involves exploiting the orc's aggression to draw its aggro. He waits for the moment the orc becomes distracted by the firecracker's flare and attacks it with its axe. This is the window of opportunity. Aiming at the creature, he instantly opens the portal, retrieves a flashbang, and detonates it. The intense burst of light blinds the orc, and it will take approximately 20 seconds for its vision to return, creating a critical race against time. Seung-ho then attacks the orc's muscles, which are vulnerable due to the status effect, aiming to drastically reduce its mobility. The orc screams in rage and swings its axe at the hero, attempting to crush him. However, Seung-ho swiftly ducks just as the axe is about to strike, successfully dodging the attack. He then takes his knife and stabs the orc's foot. The moment the blade pierces the foot, the creature yells in pain and drops to its knees. Now that the orc's eye level is aligned with his own, he shoves the prepared flame canister into its mouth. As soon as the can enters the creature's mouth, it explodes. Seung-ho immediately begins to celebrate his victory, but suddenly, the orc lands a punch that sends him flying backward. He scrambles to his feet, acknowledging that he should not have lowered his guard so soon. He watches as the orc advances, its upper body engulfed in flames, though it appears unlikely to survive much longer. Seung-ho is convinced he is about to be minced by the orc and meet his end. Just then, the system notifies him that his level has risen to level 3, awarding him 10 additional points and a new skill called Will to Survive. He stands up, muttering that he is unable to handle this level of intensity and wonders where the drop item is. Suddenly, a light shines on his wrist. He examines it and discovers the drop item is a perception watch. He sighs in relief, grateful that he does not have to search for the item in the heavy rain. He approaches the dead orc, his mind racing regarding what to do with the corpse. He recalls that the Jiri mountain orc incident was under a strict embargo in the original timeline. He then questions whether releasing this information is the right thing to do, realizing that the situation could deteriorate if handled poorly. Reflecting on what Mikyung had told him earlier, Seung-ho considers the definition of awakeners as those who have played the game at least once. This realization leads to a significant conclusion. There must be thousands of awakened individuals in existence. Even if only a small minority resemble men like Oh In-han, they possess the potential to dismantle the legal system for personal gain, causing widespread chaos. Currently, his most pressing issue is the dead orc. He knows he cannot leave the corpse unattended, otherwise it will mutate into a bone creeper and begin harming people by the following day. A disturbing thought suddenly strikes him. He had not considered the possibility of becoming a zombie himself. Even as an awakener, he remains vulnerable to infection by spores, which could potentially turn him into one of the undead. Paralyzed by indecision, he struggles to determine the right course of action. He opens the portal while contemplating the few likely survivors, deciding that the creature deserves a proper disposal. Seung-ho begins digging a pit to bury the orc he just killed. However, fatigue sets in quickly, and he questions how he will manage to drag the heavy carcass into the grave. Fortunately, his newly acquired skill, Will to Survive, activates. Triggered by his exhaustion, the skill compels him to complete the task immediately. Driven by this power, he works with maximum speed, having no alternative but to finish the job. He tosses the orc into the grave, feeling grateful for the skill's assistance. Subsequently, he opens the portal and transports himself back into his moving car. The physical toll requires some recovery time before he can resume his normal activities. The next day, he wakes up questioning the reality of the weather outside. Reviewing his plans, he notes that he should have already established a defensive line. He checks his phone, wondering if all traces of the red orc have truly vanished. Deciding that it is not the right time to start new tasks today, he chooses instead to inspect the items delivered early that morning. Inside the box, he finds the necessary weapons, though he notes he can only utilize one item as a makeshift Indian war club. However, he notices that several items from the shipment are missing. He reads an included note explaining that certain items he ordered were deemed illegal and consequently failed to pass through customs. While occupied with inspecting the weapons, he hears another delivery van. He calls out loudly, instructing the driver to leave the package at the front door. A knock follows, confusing him as to why the delivery person ignored his instruction. He attempts to repeat the command before opening the gate. To his surprise, it is not a delivery person, but Mikyung. She stands there explaining that, since they haven't met in a while, she wanted to discuss something with him. Holding a bag of food, she asks if he would like to share some rabaki with her. With only 24 days remaining until the apocalypse, Sungho finds it hard to believe that Mikyung is actually visiting his home. He becomes visibly nervous and cannot stop blushing. Once she serves the meal, she urges him to eat before it gets cold, and he complies with her suggestion. Once they finish eating, he asks her what she wanted to discuss. She gets straight to the point, recalling his earlier mention of investigating Sura, and offers to discuss some important information regarding the game. This topic is not what the protagonist had expected. He had briefly entertained the thought that she might have come with romantic intentions. However, he reassures himself that discussing the impending apocalypse is the best option at the moment, recognizing the necessity of having reliable company during difficult times. She quickly begins to take out the trash while he prepares by setting up his computer. He decides to reveal to her that he has awakened, reasoning that it would be better for her to hear it from him rather than finding out through other means. He begins by explaining the Iron Death Plague in detail, noting that roaming with a group larger than 6 makes them an easy target for zombies. He emphasizes that the perception stat is crucial for survival, making it the most important skill, as the ultimate goal of the game is simply to stay alive. Just as he is about to explain further, she interrupts him. She brings up the comments made by Owen Hawk regarding the backlash directed at the player Kimba Plover, questioning why he is not sharing information. Seungho does not have a ready answer and asks her to guess the reason. She speculates that everyone has a motive and that specific circumstances likely justify the silence. He then informs her that he rejected the man's offer to join his group, prompting her to wonder why he would make that decision. To explain, he takes out his phone and plays a recording of the group discussing a plan to kidnap a girl simply because she was playing hard to get. Hearing the conversation again angers him. He turns to Mikyung, warning her that when the apocalypse arrives, people's true colors will inevitably be revealed. He advises her not to trust anyone, but she startles him by suggesting that they should form a party together. He clenches his fist, unable to give an immediate answer. A conflict exists because one of his goals is to reach level 10 and unlock the shop before the tutorial begins. In survival life, the rank of respawning monsters scales according to the player's level. Consequently, if she were to accompany him, she would likely suffer a horrific death. He laughs nervously, asking what she would do if he were to turn into a zombie. She assures him she would be fine and uses her trait to teleport onto his dining table. She demonstrates her ability, Blink, boasting that she would only need to dodge if he ever attempted to bite her. He is surprised by her skill but warns her not to reveal it to just anyone. She replies that she trusts him and brightly suggests that they would make a great team, provided they do not turn into zombies. Sometime later, he stands near the trees, reflecting on how easy it was to construct fences. The process involved hammering support posts into the ground to set them up, followed by wrapping and securing barbed wire around them. Following that, he installs infrared sensors in several locations, completing the task. Surveying his handiwork, he praises himself, convinced that this effort surely warrants at least a single point in dexterity. Seungho then begins to head back, finishing up the mortar application and establishing a defensive wall. He decides to proceed with transporting the packages. After some time, he completes the task of moving the boxes. As he assesses his next move, a sudden chill overcomes him, causing him to sneeze. He realizes that the environment in the other dimension will be cold and that he will eventually need to take shelter there, prompting him to devise necessary countermeasures. The protagonist examines the cave entrance and determines that a simple curtain will be insufficient, resolving to construct a proper gate instead. With each step he takes, his mental checklist of obligations continues to expand. Later, he visits a woodworking shop to arrange for production and purchase various items. On his return journey, he scouts the locations he intends to loot during the 5-hour window before the Iron Death Plague spreads. While compiling his list, he is intercepted by Xiong Zhenxiong, an acquaintance he has not seen in a long time. This man is a gym director, a divorcee, and the father of a young daughter. Seungho reads the man's expression, noting that he does not look well. Xiong seems indifferent to his own state, but observes Seungho's physique, noting that he appears to be getting back into shape. The protagonist then asks what is bothering him, to which Xiong replies that his distress should be obvious given that the world is ending. Seungho is surprised that the gym director is also aware of the situation, while Xiong questions whether Seungho actually believes it. Initially, Xiong was skeptical until he witnessed his friend levitating, demonstrating a superpower he had been granted. The protagonist lies, claiming he is not awakened, prompting the gym director to sigh sadly and admit that he is not awakened either. Currently, Xiong's friend is heading to a broadcasting station to monetize his ability. The gym director gestures for Seungho to sit beside him, leading Seungho to realize that the existence of the awakened will soon be public knowledge. Xiong shifts the conversation to a bizarre recent event, the Uido shootout. Seungho cannot believe what he is hearing, as he had missed the morning news. Xiong encourages him to check the news, but notes that posts are being deleted instantly, indicating that the media is now under strict control. Xiong explains the follow-up reports, detailing how authorities attempted to cover up the incident by blaming the shooting on a deserter. Consequently, the area where the shootout occurred has been closed to the public, with access restricted to the army and police. Suddenly, the protagonist stands up, offers an excuse to leave, and begins to run off. Back at home, he reflects on the fact that the shootout occurred immediately following the orc incident. The government's obvious reaction leads him to suspect that they are already involved in the situation. He opens a file on his computer and plays a video. He is surprised to discover that many people knew the exact timing of the precursor phenomenon. Even though he had eliminated the orc, the shootout still took place at the same time. While deep in thought, he questions whether someone leaked information to the government early on, attempting to initiate action starting with the first precursor phenomenon. He considers the possibility that this individual has not stepped into the spotlight because they lack an offensive trait. Although the specific identity remains unclear, he is certain that someone is operating behind the government's actions. Seungho ponders who this mysterious figure might be. Through his research, he narrows the candidates down to 3 veteran players. After significant contemplation, he eliminates the game's creator from the list. Given that the game's mechanics are being forced upon reality, the creators are likely villains. He reasons that if these villains were backed by the government, they never would have permitted him to kill the orc. He sketches the faces of the 3 primary suspects. He speculates whether the culprit is the #1 survivor. If this theory holds true, he realizes he does not need to share this intelligence with the government himself. Leaning back in his chair, the protagonist wonders if the #1 survivor is the person he actually knew. Feeling a sense of longing for his veteran friends, he chooses to trust them for the time being. Furthermore, he acknowledges that sharing information would not halt the approaching catastrophe, so he decides against intervening just yet. 2 days later, the door is constructed and the pantry is prepared, marking the completion of the first shelter. He attempts to install 2 logistic trays by drilling through the wall, but he discovers there is significantly less space than he had anticipated. He has been gradually working on waterproofing the basement, which is now finished. He steps away, resolving to figure out the remaining issues once the curing process reaches phase 2. He faces a crucial task, mapping the area using his drone. Donning his VR headset, he launches the drone into the air, viewing the shelter from a midpoint perspective before expanding his exploration. Through the drone's feed, he identifies snowfields to the northwest and an ocean to the south. Noting that the ocean appears free of monsters and abundant in prey, he decides to deploy traps to catch fish. He examines the valley to analyze the ecosystem surrounding his shelter. Suddenly, he notices the location where he had buried the owlbear, but the corpse is gone. He wonders if a large predator consumed it. However, he refrains from forming an immediate conclusion because the area is covered in numerous tracks, predominantly those of orcs, which makes the situation even more suspicious. He calculates the distance between the valley and the shelter to be approximately 1.5 kilometers, realizing that his base is in a more dangerous position than he initially assumed. Aware that goblins are in the vicinity and unwilling to risk losing the drone, he recalls the device to the shelter. He manages to sketch a detailed map and identifies the types of animals inhabiting the forest. His next objective is to physically inspect these areas himself. He intends to start by visiting the nearest swamp to determine if farming is viable. Suddenly, the infrared alarm triggers. He steps outside, knowing goblins are present, as evidenced by their footprints on the ground. Since the protagonist was already anticipating this, the situation presents a perfect opportunity. He wonders if his heightened awareness is a result of his recently increased perception stat, noting that even the faintest sounds have become incredibly clear to him. After some time, he manages to spot a group of goblins while remaining undetected. This position provides him with the perfect angle for an ambush. He draws his spear and arrow, launching an attack directly at a goblin's head. The target falls dead, but the remaining goblins instantly spot him and charge forward to retaliate. However, he eliminates them swiftly, making the kills appear effortless. Having killed 4 of them, he turns his attention to the remaining 4. Although he becomes surrounded, he retrieves an item from his pocket that instantly causes the goblins to collapse to their knees. Taking advantage of their incapacitated state, the protagonist uses his knife to decapitate them. He realizes he successfully exploited the goblins' exhaustion to win the battle, a strategy he can hardly believe actually worked. The countdown to the apocalypse now stands at 21 days. As he digs into the ground, fatigue sets in, but his trait suddenly triggers, restoring his body to peak efficiency. He acknowledges that this skill is not entirely useless after all. Shortly thereafter, he finishes burying the goblin corpses. He then turns his attention to the loot he has gathered. First, he collects the guaca fruit, which is highly effective for restoring strength. The loot also contains a significant amount of vegetable oil, leading him to suspect that a harvest site must be nearby. Upon inspecting the pouch of the goblin leader, he is surprised to discover a living toad inside. The creature is blue, causing him to wonder why they would carry a live specimen rather than a dead one. Suddenly, the toad begins to emit a scent, and he realizes this is the source of the paralysis poison used by the goblins. He instantly decides that he must raise this toad regardless of the difficulties. Beyond finding the creature incredibly cute, he sees practical value in extracting its poison. By injecting small doses, he plans to build up a resistance to the toxin. Furthermore, utilizing the paralysis poison will significantly simplify future hunting efforts. He decides to name the toad Jodok and intends to feed it well. The system then sends a notification confirming that the toad is now recognized as his property. He wonders if this mechanic acts as a hidden gimmick implemented into reality, a thought that leads him to overthink and overanalyze the situation. Following this, he resumes exploration by opening the dimensional gate. Using the gate to travel back and forth, he finally completes the reorganization of his supplies. Immediately afterward, he begins searching the immediate surroundings and discovers a spring that his drone had previously missed. Examining the water, he confirms it is ordinary and poses no significant danger. He is surprised to find a hidden area near his shelter. Located right behind the spring, he discovers a guaca tree and vegetable oil buds. He proceeds to pick the fruits and harvests a substantial amount of the oil buds. To ensure he does not lose his way back to this location, he marks the trees along his path before heading back. Upon returning to his apartment, he feeds his new pet, Jodok. For the time being, he decides to raise the pet on the second floor of his apartment, reasoning that leaving Jodok alone in the hideout would result in the creature's death. Aside from caring for his pet, Sungho had numerous other tasks to complete. The most time-consuming of these was the production of the ointment, which resulted in an accidental surplus. Unsure of how to handle the excess, he determines that he cannot give it to Mikyung, specifically because she is also an awakener. Consequently, he decides to gift it to Young Neem. At Young's location, the man is drinking a protein shake when Sungho hands him the ointment, prompting him to ask what the item is. Sungho explains that he purchased too much of it and that it is highly effective for treating wounds. Hyung jokingly asks if Sungho is getting involved in multi-level marketing, a suggestion the protagonist quickly denies. Nevertheless, Hyung is grateful for both the medicine and for the information regarding Sura that Sungho had sent him. In return, Sungho thanks him for the tip regarding the shooting incident. Sungho observes that the gym is unusually quiet. Hyung explains that everyone left to formulate plans after the individual on the broadcast disseminated his knowledge. The group has decided to establish a base at this location. Sungho warns him that gathering a large number of people is a sign of danger. However, Young refuses to abandon his members, driven by his intense loyalty to them. When Young inquires about Sungho's plans, the protagonist simply brushes the question aside. Suddenly, they hear a scream that Young finds familiar. Looking down from the building, he spots Mikyung collapsed on the ground. Both men rush to her aid, questioning what occurred. She explains that she was attacked, but was unable to see the perpetrator. Hyung instantly rushes outside to inspect the building and the surrounding area, disregarding Seungho's attempt to stop him from going out at that moment. Meanwhile, Seungho remains with Mikyung. She elaborates that everything suddenly went dark before her eyes, leaving her unable to process what was happening. Hearing this detail sends a chill down Sung-ho's spine as he realizes exactly what is transpiring. Specific groups have started to make their move. He urges her to instantly use her blink ability whenever such a situation arises. He also assures her that he will send a self-defense kit soon and implores her to be extremely cautious from now on. Only 20 days remain until the apocalypse arrives. Sung-ho recalls a famous internet meme stating that if 5 people gather, one is bound to be useless. Trollers exist everywhere in the world, but they were particularly prevalent in Sura. In the game, specific patches existed for interference. Although developers responded to reports, they failed to effectively catch these malicious players. In Sura, trawlers would join a team pretending to be normal players, only to later lure the party into an area filled with monsters, causing the entire team to be wiped out. They would approach beginners with kindness, only to kill them later and steal their belongings. These individuals did everything possible to incite conflict between parties. Their actions caused the game, which was already not particularly famous, to collapse within a single year. Eventually, the user count dropped to just 4, largely because Sung-ho's team took it upon themselves to hunt down the remaining trollers. Sung-ho briefly wonders why he is recalling this history before summarizing his current findings. Following the Uido shootout, the Awakener communities have merged. They are no longer simply exchanging information, they are now actively plotting schemes. He stops speaking abruptly upon discovering that individuals are selling his videos. Browsing the site further, the protagonist realizes that his former teammate, Dawa Jusum, was actually a troller. He is shocked to see a video thumbnail claiming that Dawa Jusum was carried by the player Kim Bop Jao. Sung-ho suspects that this troller is attempting to lure victims using edited footage. Surprisingly, he sarcastically applauds Dawa Jusum, noting that the schemer is being praised for his clever thinking. Stretching his body, he resolves to train harder to handle such deceitful individuals. Over the next 13 days, whenever time permits, the hero studies weapon handling and real combat techniques via an online survival channel. During this period, he also observes monsters attacking, including assaults on hideouts. Furthermore, he notes that many existing strategies and weapons fail to account for the wire disease. Consequently, after this 13-day training regimen, Sung-ho finally focuses on selecting a primary weapon. He requires a weapon that remains functional if the wire disease strikes, while also being effective for both anti-personnel combat and monster elimination. Inspecting his tool bag, he finds an Indian war club, a wooden slingshot, ochre clay beads, and a handmade stone axe. Unfortunately, none of these perfectly meet his strict requirements. Initially, the protagonist decides to test the slingshot. While it offers high utility, the ochre clay beads are problematic due to their weak stopping power. Next, he opts to use the Indian war club. He reflects that if the wire disease is considered an inevitability, this weapon removes that worry. He notes that the most efficient method to dispatch a zombie is to destroy the spores within the skull using a blunt instrument. He recalls that his intended purchase upon reaching level 10 is an ebony wood club, a blunt weapon type, making it essential for him to increase his proficiency now. However, he questions the Indian war club's effectiveness against human opponents. He concludes that its utility is ambiguous, particularly against psychic awakeners who would be difficult to counter with such a weapon. He is aware that in survival life, killing a human yields 50 points. Although the murderer system, which forces registered killers into death matches with nearby players, was designed to prevent abuse, he anticipates that many will still eliminate other users for points, accepting the penalties. Meanwhile, he obliterates a practice dummy with the Indian War Club. He resolves to avoid hostile players until he has completed his item and skill farming. After the rigorous session, the hero wipes away his sweat and plans to dismantle the store completely, but he pauses abruptly upon hearing the sound of a wolf nearby. He is startled, wondering if an injured animal has wandered near the hideout. Later, Seung-ho discovers the wolf, which is significantly larger than average, large enough for a person to ride. The system identifies it as a gray wolf, but upon closer inspection, he realizes it is not breathing. He wonders if it was a stray or if it sought refuge near his hideout after being attacked. Seeking more information, the protagonist begins examining its injuries. Suddenly, a small wolf pup strikes him on the back. Sung-ho realizes that the deceased creature is the mother of this pup, which now stands defiantly between him and the corpse in an effort to protect her. He finds himself conflicted, unable to use force to separate the small wolf from its mother. Deciding to bury the deceased wolf immediately, the protagonist grabs a shovel. As he begins to dig, he reasons that if the wolf was a monster, the corpse would transform into a bone creeper, and if not, it would simply attract other predators. Eventually, the grave is fully dug. Meanwhile, the young wolf sleeps beside its mother, a sight that reminds Seung-ho of his own childhood and Mungchi, the dog he raised back then. He picks up the small wolf, explaining gently that its mother will be sleeping in this spot. He assures the creature that it can visit her any time, as he intends to construct a doggy door at the hideout to allow access. Seung-ho then offers the wolf a piece of meat, promising to ensure it never goes hungry until it reaches adulthood. In exchange, he asks for its assistance, specifically utilizing its exceptional sense of smell. When he asks for its agreement, the small wolf responds happily with a soft noise. Patting its head, the protagonist names the animal Dingo. A system window appears, notifying him that he has successfully communicated with the gray wolf and that Dingo is now considered his property. With this event concluded, 19 days remain until the apocalypse. Seung-ho busies himself with Dingo's training, instructing the animal to repeat recently taught actions. When asked for a paw, Dingo places it in his owner's hand. The wolf runs, sits, lies down, and remains quiet upon command, following every instruction perfectly. Finally, Seung-ho tosses a large bone into the air, which Dingo successfully catches with a leap. The protagonist feels satisfied, noting the creature's rapid learning speed, which he attributes to its otherworldly origins. Reflecting on its superior scent tracking abilities, he mentally regards Dingo as a stroke of luck and a blessing. He shows affection to his adorable companion with a kiss and begins to speak, but is interrupted by his ringing phone. Answering it, Seung-ho sees a message from Hyung suggesting he search for levitation on the web. Shortly after, he discovers an article regarding a person dubbed the first superhuman. This individual claims that zombies and monsters will soon appear, bringing disaster. The article has already reached the #1 ranking. In the comments, the public expresses skepticism, believing the broadcast channel staged the event for ratings. He observes that while many users are ignorant of the truth, the awakeners in the comments section are clearly alarmed. He finds the situation amusing, noting the irony that some people get upset when information is withheld, while others become angry when their exclusive knowledge becomes widespread. The protagonist then wonders how the government will respond. Although aware of rallies regarding these shocks and superpowers, he snaps out of his thoughts, deciding not to involve himself in such matters. Although he implies that the government will eventually take action once the second omen, the hobgoblin event, occurs, Seung-ho decides not to waste a single moment. He informs Dingo that their exploration will begin that very day. Deep down, the protagonist understands that thorough preparation is the only viable solution, and Dingo appears eager for the challenge. Later, they enter the portal world, and Seung-ho reflects on his reasons for choosing to conduct interdimensional exploration with the wolf. He allows Dingo to sniff a small pouch and commands the animal to locate it. The first objective of this exercise is to prepare for the upcoming hobgoblin event, as he needs Dingo to properly imprint the specific scent of goblins. Shortly after, Dingo barks, having successfully discovered the bait hidden in the bushes, and the hero feels proud that the animal tracked it down using only a lingering scent. The second reason for the excursion is to test whether Dingo can remain calm during live combat and follow specific commands. He gives a signal, and the wolf immediately dashes forward. With great precision, Dingo hunts down a rabbit in the grass, prompting the protagonist to praise him. The third reason for their exploration is to confirm whether hunting is viable in the other world. Seung-ho approaches Dingo to inspect the prey, observing the dead rabbit and noting its large size and powerful claws. Afterward, the boy and his small wolf continue their exploration. Moving ahead, he speculates on how Dingo's cognition would translate into system statistics. He decides to head toward the valley to verify this for himself. A system window then appears, notifying him that Dingo's health has increased by 1 point. Recalling that his own health stat as Kim Bafo was 170, the hero is impressed by how rapidly Dingo is growing. Suddenly, Dingo begins to cough, and the protagonist rushes over to offer water. He reminds his partner not to wander into the woods alone. As Dingo drinks, the boy spots a large green pepper nearby, and wonders if the wolf ate it. The system reveals the plant to be a bull pepper. Seung-ho is pleased to find such an item in the woods. He praises Dingo and promises him plenty of treats later. He then proceeds to dig up and harvest the bull pepper. Next, they set out for their final hunt. Both sit on rocks at the edge of a stream. On this occasion, Dingo does not detect any unusual scents or presences. Deep down, the boy reflects that red trout are not monsters, and therefore do not yield points or items. However, he believes it is essential for the young Dingo to gain experience, which he views as valuable. After hunting the red trout, the protagonist decides to finalize preparations for Phase 2 and return home. The following day, his entire restaurant is demolished. The manager of the demolition company instructs the hero to contact them within 3 days if any repair issues arise. Seung-ho sincerely thanks the manager for completing the work so early in the morning. Taking a deep breath, he feels a tinge of sadness seeing the demolished site, but acknowledges that the destruction was necessary. Upon entering, Seung-ho theorizes that once the apocalypse hits, those who manage to avoid infection will inevitably resort to looting shops. He concedes that he would likely take similar actions, realizing he lacks the moral standing to complain. As he begins the cleanup process, Hyung appears behind him, surveying the vacant space. Hyung notes that he too has reduced his inventory to only the barest essentials. When the protagonist questions why Hyung is there, Hyung flicks Seung-ho's forehead, expressing irritation that the hero had departed the previous day without saying a word. Hyung claims he stopped by simply to verify that Seung-ho was still alive. Throughout this interaction, Dingo observes Hyung with a cold, guarded gaze. Hyung asks if Seung-ho always owned a dog, but Seung-ho clarifies that his previous pet passed away long ago. He introduces the animal as his new companion, leading Hyung to comment on how adorable the wolf appears. Seung-ho presses for the real reason behind the visit, though Hyung insists again that he merely came to check on him. The protagonist remains skeptical, prompting Hyung to disclose a secondary motive. While admitting his concern was genuine, he reveals that he has identified the culprits responsible for the attack on Mikyung. At this juncture, only 17 days remain before the apocalypse begins. Seated together, Seung-ho learns that the group organized by Kim Chaeul-jun, a man distinguished by his habit of always wearing a hat, is specifically targeting Mikyung. Hyung further mentions that the tow truck driver, whom Seung-ho dislikes, is also affiliated with that group. Pointing toward the mountains ahead, Hyung identifies the area near the base where redevelopment had stalled, indicating that their hideout is located in that vicinity. The protagonist is curious about how Hyung uncovered this information, to which Hyung explains that the clues naturally fell into place. He elaborates that Han Jin-seon, the individual capable of levitation, recently appeared on a variety show, giving Hyung the opportunity to ask him directly. Han Jin disclosed that he had previously met Chaeul-jun's group, but found the members unpleasant. Consequently, he refused to remain with them due to personality conflicts. Following the incident with Mikyung, all the female members began to exit the party. When asked about their reasons for leaving, the women merely claimed they had received offers from other groups of awakeners. Hyung seeks Seung-ho's opinion, and the hero suggests that, unlike Mikyung, the other women were likely deceived into joining. Hyung then abruptly reveals that his own party has dwindled down to just 4 members, himself included. This revelation stuns the protagonist, who recalls that the group consisted of 20 members only days prior. Although Hyung offers no further elaboration, he acknowledges that their party is now reduced to containing only 2 awakeners. Seung-ho struggles to comprehend this information, remembering the favors they had performed for the members who ultimately decided to leave. However, Hyung remains composed, explaining to the protagonist that this is simply the nature of reality. Those individuals were merely prioritizing their own self-preservation. Furthermore, Hyung expresses concern regarding his daughter, little Ji-eun, and debates whether he should contact his ex-wife. The protagonist maintains a neutral expression, recognizing the difference in their situations, yet he wishes to verify if his own reasoning is sound. He decides to ask Hyung a question that has been weighing on his mind. The protagonist inquires how Hyung would react if the apocalypse truly arrived and people began to threaten him. Before he can complete the hypothetical scenario, Hyung cuts him off, insisting firmly that he would not hesitate to kill them. Hyung explains that while he holds a principle against harming others, a lawless disaster would leave him with no alternative. He believes that in such dire times there is no room for evil to persist. Hyung then curiously asks why Seung-ho would raise such a topic, noting that the question seems uncharacteristic of him. The protagonist avoids giving a genuine answer just as a cry for help rings out. The sound emanates from the hero's cell phone. Hyung wonders if it is the voice of a lost child, but Seung-ho immediately checks the map and requests that Hyung look after Dingo for a short time. Elsewhere, Mikyung finds herself surrounded by hostile individuals, having apparently transmitted a distress signal. The tow truck enforcer mockingly asks Mikyung why she is causing such a scene and demands that she come down. In response, Mikyung stands on the edge of the rooftop, shouting that she had already refused their offers, yet they continued to chase her. She demands to know their motives. The enforcer urges her to reconsider, but Kim Chaeol and Ma Jung-in step forward, insisting on handling the situation their way. They point out that since they are located in a desolate redevelopment area, no one will come to rescue her. Kim Chaeol advises her not to waste her energy, reminding her that they all possess special traits, before initiating a countdown. Meanwhile, the protagonist is hiding in a nearby alley, preparing his weapons. At the count of 2, he aims his slingshot at Kim Chaeol, and by the count of 3, the target is struck. The entire group is thrown into confusion, scrambling to identify the source of the attack. Suddenly, the protagonist emerges wearing a helmet and steps forward to attack On-in, internally debating whether he should reveal his identity. Wielding the Indian war club, Seung-ho strikes On-in with significant force before immediately targeting another gang member. This second individual emits a dark energy, leading the hero to suspect the presence of a vision-obscuring trait. Yet Seung-ho manages to land a hit regardless. Breathing heavily, the hero hears Mikyung shouting a warning. He pivots to find Kim Chaeol rushing at him with a bat. The blow connects, cracking his helmet. Seung-ho is startled by the sheer destructive power of the strike. Simultaneously, Kim Chaeol identifies his attacker, but Seung-ho is distracted by his analysis, recognizing that Kim Chaeol possesses an incredibly potent offensive trait, even at this early stage. Kim Chaeol vows to cripple the protagonist as his subordinates rally behind him, resolved to use their full strength even though they are not awakeners. On-in charges the hero, channeling electricity and mocking him during the approach. Seung-ho hesitates, uncertain how to respond to such a display of skill, and briefly considers utilizing the dimensional gate. However, just as On-in prepares to land a blow, Dingo bursts onto the scene and bites down on On-in's arm. Hyung steps out from a nearby alley, questioning the appropriateness of such violence in broad daylight. He suggests the gang should depart to avoid legal trouble, mentioning that he is contacting the police. The group decides to retreat for the time being. Hyung remarks that despite their arrogant behavior, they appear weak. Mikyung descends from the roof and immediately grabs the hero's head to check for injuries, pointing out the damage to his helmet. Hyung offers to carry the boy on his back. Witnessing their concern, Seung-ho's thoughts flash to his former comrades from the game. When Mikyung suggests a hospital visit, the protagonist turns away, insisting he is unhurt. He then asks Hyung about recruiting Mikyung into their party. Hyung replies that there is no issue provided she consents, and she happily accepts the invitation. The hero departs, claiming he has tasks to attend to, leaving Hyung and Mikyung confused by his strange behavior. Upon returning home, he focuses on regulating his emotions and planning the second phase of his preparations. He feels his sudden exit was unavoidable. Seeing Hyung and Mikyung together tempted him to entrust them with the secret of his abilities. However, the decision had already been made. To maximize the utility of the dimensional gate, he determines he must level up rapidly, prioritizing skill acquisition and resource farming. The concept of overwhelming enemies with superior item power resonates with him even more after the confrontation with the mountain gang. He realizes that sticking to his original preparation plan will result in a level gap of 3 or more, causing the monsters spawning near him to be stronger, which would complicate teaming up with his 2 companions. He continues working until he successfully installs a wood-burning stove in his hideout, aware that it will ensure a good night's sleep. Dingo also appreciates the warmth, sleeping soundly beside it. Now the protagonist waits for a few final installations to arrive, which will bring his initial hideout setup to near completion. Driven by determination, he resolves to stay awake through the night to work. The countdown now stands at 16 days remaining before the apocalypse begins. A news broadcast provides an update regarding the previously observed asteroid. The report states that the HSA has announced that the asteroid Yunjambi has reached the midpoint of the solar system. While the HSA is monitoring its trajectory closely, Jupiter's gravity has caused the meteorite to fracture. Thomas Chandler, the head of the Meteorite Observation Department, assures the public that the resulting fragments, named Yunjambi Alpha and Beta, pose no threat of approaching Earth. However, Seung-ho recalls the actual timeline. On D5, merely 5 days prior to the apocalypse, Yunjambi Beta was the first to impact. It struck the ocean near a Russian vessel, generating a tsunami that washed the ship ashore at Gamcheon port, an event that introduced zombies to Korea. The broadcast shifts focus to the shooting incident at Uido. It is reported that President Jang Won-taek has remained secluded in his residence for a week, leading opposition leaders to release a joint statement agreeing to convene a hearing. Speculation is rising among the public that these political maneuvers are linked to rumors regarding awakeners and the approaching catastrophe. Hearing this, the protagonist inwardly acknowledges that the end of the world is genuinely at hand. He considers the media's newfound interest in these topics to be a positive development, concluding that the increased scrutiny will make it harder for awakeners to engage in criminal activity. He then opens his laptop to gauge the community's reaction. Scrolling through the comments, he observes that users are expressing strong views on the situation. Coincidentally, he notices a comment posted by My Dream, prompting him to wonder if this individual has remained active this whole time. My Dream was a player reputed for his kindness toward beginners, and Sungho's group had played with him on several occasions. This player's ambition was to construct a bunker. Had the hero not possessed a private portal, he might have been tempted to join that cause. He decides against entering any agreements unless his veteran friends also choose to join My Dream, though he bookmarks the comment for future reference. Closing his laptop, he turns his attention to the construction of his second shelter. The following day, Sungho stands before his hideout, realizing that he is capable of pulling 2 consecutive all-nighters. Although physically exhausted, the sight of the completed exterior revitalizes him. It is now time to resolve the issue of utilizing the electricity generated by the solar panels. Essentially, this involves several wiring procedures to ensure the current is compatible with his electronic devices. Fortunately, when he plugs his phone in to charge, it functions correctly. He raises his arms in triumph, declaring that he has successfully established the foundation for survival in this new world. For the first time in a long while, he experiences a surge of dopamine. The previous day, he also gathered luminous and ignition stones. Upon digging further, he discovered a mineral known as emerus, which is harder and sharper than obsidian. Although it is currently useless to him, he considers it a better find than coming up empty-handed. He decides to postpone the installation of the LED lights, as he needs to organize the food supplies in the basement before going to sleep. Suddenly, a loud noise from Dingo demands his attention. Rushing outside, Seongho finds Dingo in a standoff against maned wolves, a species of monster he recognizes from Sura. He questions why these creatures are present, as they typically inhabit high-altitude regions. Observing Dingo's visible rage, the hero suspects that these are the specific wolves responsible for killing Dingo's mother. He attempts to soothe Dingo, though he internally acknowledges that he cannot defeat the entire pack at this moment. If he moves to retrieve a better weapon, he risks exposing his back to an attack which could prove fatal. Consequently, the protagonist resolves to focus on forcing the alpha wolf to retreat, reasoning that the rest of the pack will likely follow. He observes the wolves' extremely cautious behavior, noting that the subordinates only move once the alpha acts first. He considers their ability to coordinate an attack and recalls that these wolves possess an extreme sensitivity to sense. Fortunately, Sungho is carrying pepper spray. He deduces that if he can spray the alpha, he will be able to drive it away from the shelter. Sweat runs down his face as he weighs the risk of being attacked before he can execute his plan. He contemplates a method to distract the creature to land a hit with the spray. Suddenly, an idea strikes him, which he believes is logically feasible. Determined to defend the hideout he built with his own hands, he steels himself. He instantly throws a knife at the alpha, but the creature dodges. The alpha then leaps at the hero, but as it closes the distance, Sungho opens the portal. Seizing the opportunity, he sprays the animal. As the alpha loses its composure, the protagonist drives his knife into its eye. With that strike, the wolf pack retreats. The hero sits down, having narrowly escaped death. Dingo approaches to check on him, and Sungho pats the wolf's head in appreciation. He promises Dingo that he will avenge its mother in the future. With this confrontation over, only 15 days remain until the apocalypse arrives. Having finished organizing the basement, Sungho heads to the hardware store and pharmacy with the goal of finalizing his minimal defense supplies. By this point, he has gone 68 hours without sleep, and the recent confrontation with the wolves has further exhausted him. Nevertheless, he reflects that he might have been fortunate during that encounter. Had those creatures been werewolves instead, he likely would have been completely decimated. He considers the possibility that he had become careless, focusing solely on immediate threats without accounting for random variables that could appear. Feeling backed into a corner, Seung-ho entertains the idea of expanding his territory to construct a proper shelter. His previous drone surveys also suggest this is the correct course of action. Hyunjin greets him from a distance while Seung-ho remains deep in thought, calculating that his new plans could secure additional space for farming and supply storage. He determines that once the second line of defense is established, he will focus on acquiring Bluetooth beacons to extend his signal range. His friend repeatedly calls his name, finally snapping Seung-ho back to reality by asking what he is doing there. Keeping his answer brief, Seung-ho replies that he has come to purchase various supplies. Hyunjin assumes Seung-ho is there to buy weapons, a strange conclusion given that they are standing in front of a hardware store. Hyunjin clarifies that he is not the one interested in weapons. Rather, the attractive woman accompanying him is the interested party. She is introduced as a member of their team. After completing his purchases, Seung-ho learns that his friend had run into the woman and is currently attempting to dissuade her from buying weapons at the store. However, she remains stubborn regarding her decision. Seung-ho decides it would be helpful to hand her the short summary note he had prepared. However, even after reading it, she remains entirely skeptical. She stares at him with an icy glare that unsettles him to the point where he verbally confronts her about it. Suddenly, the woman speaks up, recalling that he is actually the owner of the Taeokbokki restaurant. Seung-ho confirms her suspicion. She appears visibly stunned by his current appearance and the shift in his personality. Assuming she finds him rude, Seung-ho apologizes, but she responds by reaching into her wallet and handing him a business card. The young woman is identified as Jo Soo-yeon, and she reveals that she is a doctor, possessing both intelligence and beauty. Immediately after learning her profession, Seung-ho explains the basics of the game to her, just as he had done for Hyunjin and Mikyung. However, the doctor concludes that she does not particularly care, expressing her belief that the game lacks a scientific explanation. Seung-ho agrees that it is simply a mindless game, but Soo-yeon is not yet finished with her assessment. One specific detail bothers her, and she immediately points out that he must be an awakener himself. Seung-ho feels slightly discouraged by her accurate assumption, noting that Soo-yeon is exceptionally intelligent. She deduces that his explanations of the game are so vivid that it is impossible he has not played it. However, Soo-yeon does not pursue the thought any further, and simply thanks him for the summary. Meanwhile, Youngjun feels jealous that he could not explain things as effectively. The doctor humorously remarks that Hyungjun cannot even compare to the depth of knowledge Seung-ho possesses regarding the game. Grateful for the assistance, Soo-yeon befriends Seung-ho, recognizing him as a good person. Consequently, another attractive woman is effectively added to his circle. The very next day, the protagonist is back in his room, cleaning the blade of his spear. The new weapon appears formidable, and he is curious to test its capabilities in combat. With his initial setup now complete, he calls for his dog, Dingo, and explains that they are going to avenge the wolf's mother. While it is not strictly an act of revenge, it would pose a significant problem if an intruder were to discover the hideout. Therefore, they must act swiftly to eliminate those dangerous threats. In the following scene, the pair prepares for the kill. For this mission, Dingo has a crucial role to fulfill. Currently, they are staring down a pack of wolves, but strangely, only 4 are visible. The most intriguing detail is the absence of an alpha wolf among the group. Upon closer inspection, Seung-ho realizes the true situation. An owlbear is ferociously tearing apart the flesh of a wolf, having already slaughtered several of them. Seung-ho considers the creature's presence convenient, as it has effectively cleaned up a significant number of the enemies. A specific characteristic of manned wolf packs is that the moment they lose their alpha, the pack crumbles without a leader. Their senses become scattered, and they fall into confusion, resulting in a total lack of coordination. Seung-ho identifies this as the perfect opportunity to eliminate them one by one. As if on cue, one wolf rushes toward him, but Seung-ho casually deploys a web trap, capturing it with ease. The once ferocious wolf is reduced to a whimpering creature, wailing in fear of death. However, these displays do not sway the protagonist, who instantly kills it with his spear. Although the sight is pitiable, the mission must be secured. With one wolf eliminated, 3 points are acquired. The remaining 3 wolves are drawn to Seung-ho's presence as he runs off. All 3 become hyper-aggressive and initiate a chase. 2 wolves scatter to the sides, while one lunges from above to secure the kill. However, Seung-ho counters using a spray. He incapacitates one, but he remains under attack by the other 2. approaching from opposite directions. First, he targets the one on his right, plunging the spear deep into the wolf's belly. The remaining wolf attempts to use this opening to attack from behind, but Dingo comes to the rescue with a powerful tackle. With another wolf killed, he secures 3 additional points. Seong-ho menacingly declares his intent to stab each of them until they are dead, proving that he is not the one in danger, but rather the danger itself. With the wolf pack defeated, Seong-ho reaches level 5, gaining additional effects for his special trait. Curious about the changes, he inspects the properties of his gate. The new feature renders the gate invisible to everyone else. Additionally, there is a projection effect that allows him to hear sounds from the location where the gate is projected. To test these functions, Seong-ho immediately casts the gate. He discovers that he can view the interior of his house without physically traveling to the other side. The transparency proves effective, ensuring that no one will be able to detect his ability moving forward. Previously, Seong-ho had worried about the possibility of accidentally crossing into a dungeon without knowing the threat level beforehand. However, thanks to the projection effect, that risk is now eliminated. The fact that this effect appeared at level 5 suggests that more rewards await him as he reaches higher levels. He had never assumed that these early levels would hold such significant benefits. Nevertheless, he still has a substantial amount of work to complete, starting with the burial of the wolves he just killed. 2 days after subduing the wolves, the protagonist checks off several tasks. First, he travels to the other world and conducts another survey using his drone. Setting the radius to 1 kilometer, he locates various harmless animals. Even now, there are no sightings of goblins or kobolds. The area appears completely devoid of monsters. Next, Seong-ho aims to gather intelligence on the goblin nest, located 30 kilometers away. That specific nest is reportedly large enough to house numerous hobgoblins, meaning that defeating them will be a difficult challenge. Having gained confidence regarding the immediate safety of his location, Seong-ho feels it is the right time to begin expanding. He starts cutting down trees, clearing the area, and flattening the ground to transform the hideout into a proper shelter base. Dingo proves to be the most valuable player, helping to create a large circle that acts as a boundary. Seong-ho prioritizes safety, setting up 2 full layers of barbed wire fencing alongside a moat. He determines that he needs to dig the moat 2 meters deeper to maximize the combined effect with the wire. While working on these defenses, he utilizes the projected portal to watch television. The government has recently announced plans to carry out a formal investigation into awakeners. In the real world, Seong-ho actively purchases materials from hardware stores. He visits multiple home renovation shops to acquire tool sets. On his way back home, he even takes the opportunity to spy on the rival group's hideout. Going a step further, Seong-ho rents a motorcycle and a mini excavator, intending to use the heavy machinery once he undergoes additional training. The small blue toad continues to provide excellent support. Seong-ho routinely injects small amounts of poison to build up resistance, eventually gathering enough toxin to coat a weapon of his choice. Back in his room, he finds himself completely shocked. He discovers that Survivor 1, a player with 4,500 hours of playtime, has joined the mission. This revelation leads Seong-ho to speculate about the connection to the Weedo shootout. Alongside the government's suspicious control over the media, the president has been secluded in one location. While these events might appear coincidental on the surface, Seong-ho suspects a much deeper connection. His initial theory remains consistent. Survivor 1 is collaborating with the president to ensure his safety. He believes this collaboration exists because Survivor 1 possesses knowledge of the game's background story. Since Survivor 1 is known as an item collector, Seong-ho deduces that he likely demanded a massive shelter from the president in exchange for this intelligence. Furthermore, he seemingly chose the president as a partner to secure the highest possible leverage and authority. The situation is complicated. Seong-ho wonders if it is all a massive bluff, yet the involvement of the user My Dream does not quite fit into that narrative. His contemplation begins to cause a headache, but he eventually reaches a conclusion. If both Survivor 1 and My Dream are collaborating, then Seong-ho intends to alter his personal strategy as well. In the following scene, Seong-ho creates a new account and VR identity. He worries about receiving a delayed response, which could postpone his plans, but My Dream replies almost immediately. Seong-ho assumes the user is likely unemployed, but focuses on verifying his legitimacy via VR chat. The chat initiates and My Dream joins the White Room. The 2 players confront each other. My dream is particularly annoyed by Seungho's unknown alias and the fact that he has chosen to wear a ridiculous duck face avatar. Seungho offers an indifferent apology. My dream interprets the disguise as a sign that he is dealing with a veteran who wishes to conceal his identity, though Seungho keeps him in the dark. My dream decides to test him with 3 critical questions. Only after these are answered will he acknowledge the stranger. The first question concerns the maximum jump height of a werewolf, to which Seungho immediately answers 3 meters. He also correctly identifies the owlbear's weakness, noting that the answer is light, a piece of basic knowledge. Finally, regarding the evolutionary stages of zombies, Seungho explains that instead of merely possessing infection abilities, these zombies consume actual nutrients to function. Accumulating these nutrients allows them to evolve into ghouls. He adds that, interestingly, some even become enhanced zombies before reaching that stage. My dream then poses a 4th question, despite his initial claim that he would ask only 3. Seungho refuses to reveal the exact number of precursor events in the story. Upon hearing this refusal, the other player laughs, admitting that Seungho is indeed a true veteran. The protagonist becomes visibly annoyed and demands that the other user contact Survivor 1 to join the call immediately. However, he is informed that this is currently impossible. My dream offers no explanation for the refusal, leading Seungho, currently using a duck-faced avatar, to openly call out the excuse as a lie. Changing the subject, the other user acts cryptically, tipping his hat and hinting that a significant event is imminent. Seungho begins to suspect the man might be unstable, feeling as though he is merely reciting filler dialogue to buy time. Suddenly, a chill runs down his spine as the reality of the situation strikes him. My dream abruptly disconnects from the chat, and Seungho realizes that the entire conversation was a ploy to trace his real-world location. At that exact moment, a man enters the internet cafe accompanied by 2 security guards and orders them to lock the doors. When the receptionist attempts to enforce the rule regarding payment for their time, the intruder aggressively grabs her arm, declaring that they are there to locate a specific individual rather than to play games. Seungho is troubled by this aggressive approach, as My Dream was known for maintaining a low profile and acting undercover. It is strange that he has chosen such an offensive tactic. Notably, the intruder possesses an ability reminiscent of mind control, which he uses to manipulate the receptionist. Realizing he is in a precarious situation, the protagonist knows he must escape immediately. If captured, he would likely be subjected to the same mental manipulation. Consequently, he rushes to the restroom and activates his dimensional gate ability. Meanwhile, the pursuer moves through the cafe, indiscriminately using his mental powers on the patrons to uncover Seungho's identity. Having searched every other area, he turns his attention to the restroom, supremely confident that his target is hiding within. As he kicks open each stall door, the intruder speculates whether his quarry is a stealth-type assassin. Despite the potential awkwardness of interrupting an innocent bystander, My Dream remains focused, confident in his ability to handle stealth-based opponents. To detect any invisible presence, he splashes a bucket of water across the room to reveal uneven surfaces and flails his hands through the air, hoping to make physical contact. The protagonist had indeed summoned his gate, but he strategically positioned it flat against the wall. Ironically, the pursuer is currently standing directly in front of the portal, unable to see it due to its invisibility. Following his inspection, the intruder admits that his assumption about Seungho being a stealth user was incorrect. This leads him to a second conclusion. The target must be a movement specialist. Resembling a discount version of Nanami, he orders his group to scan the entire area again, reminding his men that a substantial reward awaits them upon the target's capture. Observing the situation from the safety of his portal, Seungho reflects on the turn of events. He acknowledges that, despite being wealthy in reality and humble within the game, he never wished for the situation to escalate to this point. He mentally thanks My Dream for providing clarity to the situation. For some time, Seungho had felt conflicted, but now he is absolutely certain of his course of action. Deciding to reveal himself, he resolves to fight without restraint, no longer holding back from responding to violence with equal force. His opponent sighs, wondering where Seungho is concealing himself. The man operates under the assumption that Seungho is a movement-based user, realizing that a veteran with so many accumulated hours would be difficult to track. Suddenly, the protagonist appears from behind, like a ghost to greet him. My Dream spots him in the mirror just as Seungho lunges forward with a spear strike. The poisonous tip slashes the man's leg, and within seconds, he succumbs to its effects. The antagonist, who had been posturing arrogantly, meets his downfall due to a single slip-up. Without pausing to confirm the man's identity, Seung-ho slams his face into the wall, warning him not to turn around. He then mocks the man for the pain caused by the poison currently coursing through his veins. Every time the man attempts to speak, Seung-ho harshly orders him to shut up. Next, gripping his blade, Seung-ho points out that neither the apocalypse nor the tutorial has officially begun. He adds that the murderer system is effectively inactive as well. As he speaks, he slices through the belt holding the man's gun. Adopting a terrifyingly serious tone, Seung-ho brutally declares that he would face no penalty if he were to kill him right then and there. The blade hovers against the man's neck, forcing him to remain obediently silent. Seung-ho is impressed that the man finally knows how to keep his mouth shut. The opponent's body collapses. Although he remains conscious, the poison renders him immobile for the time being. Seung-ho begins his interrogation with the first question, inquiring why the man was attempting to sell out Survivor 1 and targeting innocent people in the process. The man who had attempted to hunt others is now reduced to a paralyzed victim, a pathetic monster that could be farmed without lifting a finger. My Dream curses at Seung-ho, who responds by confiscating the man's gun, stating that this is the price he must pay for even entertaining the idea of capturing him. Clutching his knife, Seung-ho issues a chilling threat, promising to actually kill the man if they ever encounter one another again. Following this confrontation, Seung-ho escapes the cafe well before the rest of the group arrives. He makes it home safely and immediately crosses into the other dimension. There, he disassembles the gun and begins inspecting the man's identification card. The man's name is revealed to be Kwon Kyung-jun. He is in his late 30s, manages a golf club, and controls 3 bunkers through his business. Additionally, he appears to be a wealthy benefactor to multiple women, securing both romantic partners and financial resources. Regarding his abilities, Seung-ho assumes he possesses a powerful skill given the extensive number of hours he spent on the game. It is clear to Seung-ho that the skill is related to mind control. All of this valuable information is now at Seung-ho's disposal. Of course, skills are not guaranteed to improve, simply because someone has spent a few thousand hours in the game. It is noted that even players who dedicate their lives to games like Valorant or Counter-Strike can spend 10,000 hours playing, yet remain stuck at the same skill level. Regardless, Seung-ho understands that the game has always prioritized survival above all else. Consequently, he views his own portal skill as essentially a cheat code for veterans. For the time being, he decides to treat this as a theory until he is able to confirm the skills of another veteran player. Next, Seung-ho tests the gun, reflecting on the fact that the apocalypse is soon to arrive. Possessing absolute conviction about one specific detail, he proceeds through the forest, following Dingo's lead. Eventually, the dog barks, alerting him to an area of interest. There, the lifeless bodies of police officers lie scattered alongside several goblins. Maintaining his composure, the protagonist checks on the condition of the bodies. It turns out that one of the officers is actually alive. Although he lacks fatal wounds, he is suffering from the effects of a paralysis poison. However, the more concerning detail is his missing weapon, though Seung-ho briefly considers the possibility that the officer never carried one to begin with. In any case, Seung-ho moves the bodies together and instructs the survivor to rest there for 30 minutes until the poison's effects subside. He then turns his attention to inspecting the goblin corpses. At first glance, he identifies multiple bullet holes, confirming that the police officers were indeed armed. The critical question remains, why is only the gun missing? After contemplating the situation, Seung-ho reaches a revelation, suspecting that this is the work of a gold goblin. This realization excites him, as he is eager to hunt the creature down himself. With a new plan established, the protagonist proceeds to dial emergency services on his phone. He also leaves a note detailing the precise location and providing instructions to bury the goblin corpses. Seung-ho understands that the public is already aware of monsters, rendering a stealthy approach pointless. Currently, he is in a race against time, hoping that his small, lethal companion can assist him. In a different location, a skirmish breaks out between a goblin and a non-awakened individual. The goblin dodges the man's swing and retreats. With 3 creatures remaining, the man questions his captain, asking if this is truly the correct method of handling the situation. He expresses confusion as to why he must act as a tanker when he possesses no abilities to begin with. The captain utilizes his skill, which grants him an advantage through psychokinesis. The only drawback is that the skill requires a significant amount of time to cast. The captain prepares a cluster of rocks, and hurls them to crush the goblin's body. While he plays the role of support, his companion asks when the remaining party members are expected to arrive. The captain reveals that the rest of the party headed toward Gaia Mountain, but were apparently stopped and unable to ascend. This news comes as a shocking revelation to the ordinary man, who lacks any abilities. The subordinate wishes to retreat, but his captain believes they should press forward. 3 goblins ambush the man and are on the verge of overwhelming him when rocks smash into their faces, diverting their attention. Fortunately, these goblins are not as physically strong as their counterparts in the game. The captain instructs his companion to keep pushing forward while maintaining composure. He believes that if they can handle the monsters and capture the hobgoblin group, they will secure a significant advantage. However, the psychokinesis user becomes so preoccupied with lecturing his partner that he lowers his guard and is struck by a goblin's mace. With his hand injured, he loses control over his ability. It is notable that a lowly goblin managed to outsmart him with a counter strategy, creating a situation that appears hopeless. Now completely defenseless, the pair is surrounded by the 3 goblins, who begin lunging from all directions. It seems to be the end for the amateurs until a bolt suddenly pierces a goblin's head. A second and third shot follow immediately, injuring the remaining 2 creatures. Much to their confusion, the party of 2 has no idea what is transpiring. They stare into the dark forest, questioning where the arrows originated. The scene shifts to Seung-ho, holding his combat bow. Initially, he questions whether intervening and wasting ammunition was the correct move. However, Seung-ho is pleased that he was able to confirm vital information regarding the Awakeners. First, he learned that this group was prevented from ascending the mountain. Second, he observed that the group of goblins was already significantly weakened. Utilizing these pieces of intelligence, Seung-ho formulates his next plan. He has already devised a method to handle the goblin group. The strategy is straightforward. It revolves around provoking a goblin, which can be achieved by throwing a stone. After inciting the creature's rage, he intends to lure it toward the dimensional portal gate using simple cues. Once the goblin is sufficiently close to the gate, Seung-ho plans to launch an attack from the other dimension, utilizing the advantage of seeing through the gate while remaining transparent to observers. As the first goblin is severely injured, its screams will attract the attention of its allies. Using the dimensional gate as a barrier, Seung-ho will forcibly retract his spear from the goblin's body, effectively erasing all physical evidence of his attack. Regarding the reaction of the hobgoblin, known for its high perception stat in the game, it will likely notice the dead subordinate and immediately suspect the other goblins of plotting against it. This will sow chaos and disharmony within the group, causing the subordinates to distance themselves from their leader. Seizing this opportunity, the calculating Seung-ho plans to materialize from the other side to decapitate them, maintaining the distinct advantage of the first strike. This process is intended to be repeated in the same fashion. His plan progresses smoothly at first, but a complication arises regarding the behavioral patterns of the remaining goblins. To his shock, Seung-ho faces an unexpected scenario. The hobgoblin turns to engage him, while the gold goblin flees with the loot, implying that a schism has occurred between the 2 monsters. This is bad news for the protagonist, who is now forced to attempt a desperate gamble. His immediate threat is the hobgoblin, who is closing the distance with alarming speed. With no other options available, Seung-ho does his best to block the powerful smash. Although he manages to block the direct hit, his body suffers from the shock of the impact and is thrown into a nearby tree. Now trembling and wounded, the situation looks dire for him. The hobgoblin wastes no time attempting to finish him off. Seung-ho knows that if he falls here, his demise is certain. The creature's mace swings toward him at full speed, aiming to crush his skull. At that critical moment, Seung-ho's declining health triggers the activation of his critical skill, Survival Instinct. With his eyes flashing yellow, he reacts to the hobgoblin's assault at point-blank range. However, instead of counterattacking the monster, he executes a brilliant maneuver by dashing after the fleeing gold goblin. Utilizing the gun he obtained from Kwon Kyung-jun, he aims at the creature's head and fires, killing the gold goblin instantly. Immediately following the kill, he summons the dimensional gate. Seung-ho has achieved the first phase of his farming mission, but he still must contend with the hideous monster pursuing him. He brings the firearm into the melee fight and begins shooting the creature. Unable to withstand the firepower, the hobgoblin is overwhelmed. Seung-ho retaliates by slashing the creature across its body with style. The monster screams as it dies, raising Seung-ho's level to 6 and netting him 16 points. Finally, His difficult quest is complete. He inspects a newly acquired skill called terrain sense, which allows him to perceive and respond to the surrounding geography. Interestingly, consistent with previous events, the items he used or held during the battle have been upgraded into official system items. Realizing that a search party is approaching, he knows he cannot waste time. Having acquired his target, he manifests the dimensional gate and steps inside, intending to rest in his hideout until the search party departs. The following day, Seung-ho is woken up by his dog. He checks his watch and realizes that he slept for an entire day due to the severity of his injuries. Acknowledging the risks associated with survival instinct, he resolves to use it only in extreme situations. Before heading out on his next mission, he examines the loot he retrieved from the gold goblin. He lays the items on the table, revealing several revolvers, a dagger, and other miscellaneous goods, proving the goblins were exceptional hoarders. While Seung-ho is satisfied with the revolvers, he considers the mithril knife he secured to be the true prize. This weapon possesses the attribute of permanent invariance, a rarity within the game. It stands as one of the few armaments capable of remaining unaffected by the approaching disease catastrophe. However, Seung-ho is troubled by the question of how a mere goblin managed to acquire such a rare item, which typically costs a staggering 100 points in the shop. Upon inspecting every inch of the blade, he realizes that the weapon is actually flawed and imperfect. While contemplating this, he arrives at a realization. The goblins of this realm carry metal weaponry. Given their level of intelligence, it should be impossible for such creatures to manufacture these items independently. This raises the question of whether a sudden mutation occurred, altering the trajectory of their civilization. It implies the existence of even more intelligent goblins, perhaps researchers conducting experiments. Nevertheless, he acknowledges that this theory is currently baseless. He plans to verify it later, but for the moment, he is more interested in opening the small satchels. Feeling as though he has won the lottery, Seung-ho retrieves a bunch of shade grapes. This unique fruit is known to enhance a person's night vision. Their presence explains why the goblins were able to move so easily at night. Opening the status window, the protagonist inspects his growth rate. He is quite pleased with the results, observing that his current progression is faster than it was in the game. With the basics concluded, Seung-ho decides it is time to return to the real world. Activating his ability, he steps through the portal while scrolling through his phone. His device begins buzzing incessantly the moment he regains a signal. Hyungjun, Mikyung, and even Suan have all sent messages to check on his status. Receiving such attention leads him to wonder if he has become a popular figure. His first destination is the fitness center. In the subsequent scene, Seung-ho opens the door to meet his friends. Before he can even greet them, they rush toward him, relieved to see that he is safe and in one piece. Curious, the protagonist inquires about the unfamiliar faces present. Hyungjun brings them forward, introducing the new individuals as his party members. Lee Kyung-hoon and Kim Bora greet him politely as they exchange pleasantries. Seung-ho had expected at least one additional member, but it turns out that this person is currently busy purchasing camping gear at a discount store. He is astonished to learn that such a place exists, prompting Mikyung to intervene and confirm that it is a very modern establishment that opened recently. The gym director then asks if Seung-ho is up to date regarding the incident on the news. Seung-ho confirms that he is, stating that he is caught up on everything via MeTube. A suggestion is made regarding the possibility of establishing a channel there as well. Meanwhile, the same doctor who performed the autopsy on the goblin from Gaia Mountain has entered a state of panic, issuing a public warning for everyone to prepare for the coming apocalypse. Additionally, the president holds a national meeting, announcing that the government is making every effort to verify the location of the game's creator. Hyungjun inquires about Seung-ho's next major objective. The entire party has gathered at this location specifically because of Seung-ho's extensive knowledge of the game. However, Kyung-hoon appears irritated that Hyungjun continues to seek advice, pointing out that he had already explained that goblins obviously yield points. He argues that if an awakener kills a monster, they would instantly jump from level 1 to level 2, implying that the primary objective should simply be to stockpile supplies. Seung-ho watches the man speak confidently, despite being completely incorrect, unaware of the magnitude of his error. Addressing him directly, Seung-ho reveals that his assertions are entirely false. The arrogant individual interrupts him, asking if he has ever played the game, and behaving like an obstinate internet user incapable of listening to an opposing opinion. To protect his identity, Seung-ho maintains that he has not played. However, this admission is sufficient for the man to dismiss him. asserting that blindly trusting the community is unwise. Bora, the other female member, turns to ask the man a question. She is deeply curious about the mechanics of zombie spores and quizzes him on how the infection propagates, demanding to know if there are any specific conditions involved in the process. In response, the man makes the ridiculous claim that anyone who has ever made contact with an awakener will not turn into a zombie, a statement that stands out as incredibly bizarre. Slamming his hand on the table, Kyung-hoon stands up to assert his dominance, relying solely on his status as an awakener. He believes his experience is absolute, claiming that even casual non-awakened players would automatically be safe from the spores simply by interacting with him. Although the claim is baseless, Bora is somehow easily convinced, clinging to him as if he were a genuine expert. Mikyung then interjects with her own question, inquiring if the man has managed to clear the difficult tutorial. Kyung-hoon interrupts her immediately, emphasizing that he will protect her and insisting there is nothing to worry about. In Seungho's view, this pretentious individual is becoming increasingly aggravating. While he gives Kyung-hoon a minimal amount of credit regarding the theory, he understands there is absolutely no evidence suggesting awakened people possess complete immunity from the spores. Seungho considers the entire conversation futile due to the presence of this one individual, and finally realizes why Hyungjun had called him over. Deciding to ignore the troll and his antics, the protagonist stands up to leave, even as both of his friends urge him to remain. Seungho has no interest in sharing his knowledge with a troll like the man at the gym, so he bids the group farewell, intending to meet them again at a later time. Upon leaving the fitness club, he identifies several locations where he can farm points before the Iron Death disease arrives. He is particularly interested in visiting the camping gear store that his friends had mentioned. Eventually, after finalizing his plans, he arrives in front of his house only to spot the elegant Suan. She has been waiting patiently to give him something. Suan produces a first aid kit, which actually contains a pack of painkillers and various antibiotics that are impossible to purchase without a prescription. Seungho is genuinely stunned by her special gift and the thoughtfulness of her gesture. The doctor also reveals her address, having already written it down inside the pouch. Once again, the protagonist is confused as to why she is going to such lengths, but Suyeon believes it is only natural to share her location in exchange for knowing his. Bidding him farewell, she hurries off to attend her appointment with the director. As she walks away, she suddenly remembers one last detail. Suyeon smiles and reminds him that he needs to pay for the medicine, implying that she provided her address for that specific reason. Upon hearing this, Seungho is completely bewildered, unable to decipher Suyeon's intentions or read her behavior in the slightest. Following their parting, time passes quickly. During those hours, the protagonist traverses the city, collecting various items from different stores. He proceeds to construct a proper storage facility, and after installing sandwich panels, he is ready to load his supplies inside. He also begins utilizing the rented mini-excavator to its full potential for his construction work. Eventually, the global situation becomes increasingly critical. Public chaos, political confusion, arguments over the truth, and debates among skeptics escalate. These factors lead to an emergency UN meeting regarding the US president's planned visit to Korea. Finally, the HSA detects something previously unfathomable. On top of the unfolding events, the asteroid destined to trigger the zombie era is blazing its way toward Earth. 4 days later, Seungho finds himself at Gamcheon Port, gazing at the beautiful oceanic scenery. This location is where the final backstory event, known as the Russian ship incident, is set to occur. After ensuring that absolutely no one is around, Seungho enters an abandoned building to finalize his preparations. There, he casts open the gate, explaining his reasoning for coming to this location despite the high probability of turning into a zombie. His primary objective is to retrieve a variety of firearms from the vessel. He understands that the zombie spores function as pathogens carried by particle beams, making them nearly impossible to evade. To someone living without family, transforming into the undead at this moment versus 5 days later makes little difference. Seungho acknowledges that he could permanently relocate to the alternate dimension with Dingo, but doing so would strip his human existence of all meaning. Finalizing his preparations, he begins his mission, clarifying that this is not a suicidal endeavor. Instead, he is making a bold decision that few others would dare to consider, opting for a high-risk path to secure greater rewards, viewing this as the essence of life. Reviewing the game's patch notes regarding this specific narrative arc, he assumes the 10-point weapon mentioned is an ebony club. However, he questions how weak the zombies will be at this early stage. The notes also mention point fluctuations following the asteroid's impact. The sheer confidence and detail within the text convince him that the game's creator had foreknowledge of these events. While checking his phone, the situation deteriorates rapidly. He receives an emergency alert warning of a tsunami associated with the third precursor phenomenon. Shortly after, the waves breach the shoreline, rising higher with each surge. Far out at sea, a ship is violently tossed about by the rough waters. Seong-ho realizes the city has flooded, leaving him with a binary choice: combat monsters or face the zombies. Observing the vessel, he reflects on the sense of hopelessness humans experience in the face of natural disasters. Nevertheless, he must navigate this chaos and execute his plan using his boat. Sprinting at full speed while carrying his craft, Seong-ho leaps directly off a building, aware that time is of the essence. He needs to conclude his business before government agents arrive on the scene. A while later, he successfully anchors to the ship. Thus far, everything is proceeding smoothly. He confirms that awakeners are immune to zombification, realizing that Kyung-hoon's theory was surprisingly accurate. In fact, Seong-ho feels no adverse effects whatsoever. Encouraged by this, he climbs the ladder to initiate the second phase of his operation. Once aboard, he finds zombies lurking on the deck. He calls out to them, deliberately drawing their attention. He is dressed in shorts, wielding a shield and a mace, resembling a Power Ranger. The zombies from the game possessed unique properties. While they could not transmit the virus to infect others, they viewed everything around them as prey. Additionally, they had the ability to grow stronger in proportion to the nutrients they consumed. Seong-ho charges directly at the zombies, smashing one of them with his shield. After tackling the first creature, he readies his mace and strikes the zombie's jaw, effectively crushing its face and altering its appearance permanently. Surprised by how easily the two enemies fell, Seong-ho wonders if the zombies have been significantly weakened compared to their game counterparts. He receives 2 points for the kills, and recalls that it previously required at least 2 or more hits to eliminate a zombie, whereas now, a single strike suffices. However, remembering the incident with the orcs, he refuses to lower his guard. He acknowledges that making such a mistake twice would likely cost him his life. Next, Seong-ho inspects the hallway and discovers a group of zombies trapped inside. Seeing some of them wandering about, he advances quickly, dispatching them left and right with ease. His primary objective is to locate a pistol, so he heads toward the wheelhouse. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out, shocking him completely. He finds it hard to believe that anyone could have managed to survive the infestation on the ship. Sprinting toward the source of the noise, Seong-ho admits that non-awakeners can sometimes get lucky and survive the spores through contact with awakeners. His priority becomes saving this person to gather more intelligence. However, upon his arrival, he finds the man is already dead. The deceased individual clutches a photograph of a loved one in his hands. Although this survivor failed to become a hero in this story, his demise benefits Seong-ho, who takes the man's gun for himself. He lays the body out flat for a proper rest before exiting the room. Seong-ho realizes he must become accustomed to such sights, as tragedy will soon become commonplace. He accepts the natural reality that he may eventually have to kill other humans to maximize his own chances of survival. While untying his boat's anchor, Seong-ho is astonished to see someone approaching on a jet ski. This confirms that, just like him, another player has arrived to farm points. They cross paths, but the protagonist leaves the ship with his necessary loot, paying little attention to the newcomer heading toward the danger. Early the following morning, the news reports the disappearance of the game developer, who cannot be located for questioning. Since receiving proof of the zombies' existence, the president has been taking continuous, decisive action. Seong-ho notes that the country's leader appears to think in a manner very similar to his own. Recalling one final task, the protagonist calls Lee Woo-byum, an administrator at the countermeasure headquarters. Immediately, he drops the bombshell regarding the exact time the Doomsday event will begin. To verify his identity, Seong-ho mentions the gunshot wounds he inflicted on the hobgoblin. Woo-byum is startled to realize he is speaking to the same player. Seong-ho instructs him to record critical details rapidly, specifying the exact date, the exact hour, and even a scenario regarding a package arriving in the afternoon. Seong-ho hopes that the countermeasures department utilizes the new intelligence effectively and wishes them luck in the impending war. The president has executed a highly decisive maneuver. On community forums, people have begun to realize that the situation is deteriorating rapidly. Speculation is circulating that the internet and electricity will not last much longer, though Seung-ho views these opinions with a degree of skepticism. He remains unsure if all these predicted events will truly come to pass. However, an official announcement is soon broadcast, instructing citizens to stockpile sufficient food and water for 4 days and to return to their families. The military begins active patrols, demanding that the public cease all activities immediately. It is stated that a formal declaration will be issued by July 20th. Observing these developments, Seung-ho considers this to be the perfect response. He feels a pang of regret for not informing the public sooner about the coming state of the world. He reflects that had he known the government would handle the situation this competently, he would have utilized his trait to its full potential from the beginning. Although it appears to be a significant missed opportunity, Seung-ho copes by admitting that he likely could not have prevented the disaster regardless. He decides there is no point in dwelling on what might have happened, focusing instead on keeping his own promise. He reaffirms that he is not a hero of justice, nor does he aspire to be one. He is simply an ordinary man. Subsequently, the implementation of lockdowns and quarantines shakes the global status quo, making travel impossible. Consequently, Seung-ho spends his days within the alternate dimension. 3 days prior to the start of the apocalypse, he finishes his digging work, albeit at a slow pace. He also downloads and archives numerous videos regarding cooking and farming, anticipating the imminent loss of internet access. 2 days before the apocalypse, he scouts the surrounding area with Dingo and feels fortunate to discover several golden apples. This discovery leads him to wonder if the entire location is enchanted or blessed with exceptional fertility. A final issue arises just 1 day before the apocalypse. Seung-ho discovers that 2 packs of sweet potato jellies are missing from his storage, replaced by a single dried grape. His immediate assumption is that Dingo ate the jellies, but the honest dog shakes his head, denying any involvement. Seung-ho adopts a teasing and forceful tone to extract the truth, but the poor creature wails and cries in an effort to prove his innocence. Seung-ho eventually realizes that his small companion was not the culprit, implying someone else is responsible. He decides to review the CCTV footage to determine what actually occurred. Upon checking his laptop, Seung-ho is astonished to discover a swarm of beetles invading the premises through the doggy door. They had taken the jelly and left the grape behind as a form of payment, a sight that was undeniably adorable. The beetle actually turns to bow in gratitude toward the camera, indicating that these small creatures possess remarkable intelligence. Seung-ho's curiosity is piqued, and he develops a strong desire to interact with a few of them. However, as a safety precaution, he locks the pet door, an action that visibly saddens Dingo. He cannot remain in the other world any longer due to upcoming appointments with guests, so he opens the dimensional portal and returns. In the following scene, Seung-ho is seated with his friends and key party members, expressing surprise that they all managed to arrive safely despite the strict lockdown. He notices another unfamiliar face and learns that this new man is the final addition to the team. This handsome individual is identified as Yoo Hyun, who is already an awakener. Although he possesses little knowledge of the game, he is an electrical engineering student with significant practical experience. Seung-ho appreciates this addition to the group and introduces himself as a non-awakener. Their initial interaction is mutually polite. Seung-ho intends to address the critical matters swiftly. He requests that everyone share their intelligence one by one, beginning with Hyungjun. Hyungjun starts by recounting an incident involving his ex-wife, noting that their phone line was cut during a conversation. Concerned, he went looking for his daughter, but on his return trip, he observed barricades being erected on the highway. Through his investigation, Hyungjun discovered that authorities were attempting to evacuate citizens residing near the petrochemical complex. Next, the elegant doctor takes her turn, sharing a crucial piece of information. Suan witnessed a shelter being constructed in the local park, a shocking but verified reality. Mikyung speaks next, explaining that while she was at the market, she heard reports about high-ranking officials opposing the president's decisions. Reportedly, all the officials who protested were subsequently detained. Seung-ho realizes that these findings are far more valuable than he had initially assumed. The end is approaching, and the president's stance appears clear. He is evidently aware of what is about to occur. The major question remains why Seung-ho chose to ask for their input individually. This strategy was employed because, within a network, it is crucial to establish corresponding reasoning based on the information provided by others. While he could simply reveal himself as a veteran to persuade them, doing so would place him at significant personal risk. Seung-ho begins to speak, urging everyone to pay close attention to his next words. He then boldly declares that the president's ultimate goal is to engineer a controlled apocalypse. This statement immediately stuns every person in the room. Seung-ho supports his logic by citing the unexplained lockdowns and the sudden suspension of operations at all national facilities. He argues that there is only one reason the government would implement such drastic changes in such a short period. Putting the pieces together, he realizes that the end is imminent. Soo-yeon quickly grasps the situation, deducing that the government must already be confident of the exact date the apocalypse will unleash. Seung-ho confirms this suspicion and identifies July 20th as the likely date. In a state of panic, Yoo-hyun stands up to inform his family, but the protagonist shouts at him to stop. He is determined to prevent the group from losing their composure. Although it may sound cruel, he emphasizes that individual survival takes precedence over family concerns in this scenario. Seung-ho coldly reminds everyone in the room that any one of them could transform into a zombie starting the following day, meaning the terror of death is looming over all of them. Addressing the core issue, he produces a stack of files and acknowledges the true reason he gathered them there. He reveals that he possesses a strategy for the tutorial phase, along with detailed information regarding the survival aspects of what is to come. When Hyungjun questions the source of this intelligence, Seung-ho claims he acquired it by watching streams. He also apologizes to Mikyung for lying previously, though she accepts it without issue, noting that she had done the same to him. Thanks to these files, the group can utilize the information according to their specific needs. At the same time, Seung-ho implores them to adhere strictly to the manual to ensure they clear the tutorial phase. Following their meeting, midnight arrives. This marks the final day of peace before the world descends into hell. Seung-ho has spent 32 consecutive days preparing, leveling up in every possible domain to improve his odds. Nevertheless, he perceives imperfections in his plan and worries that his anonymous status could eventually lead to his downfall. Despite these doubts, the valiant young man holds no regrets, having acted with confidence. Seung-ho observes as his country launches missiles at the approaching asteroid, successfully making contact with the foreign object. He questions whether the end of the world is truly the ultimate, unavoidable fate for humanity. The apocalypse officially begins. Morning arrives, and with it, the lockdowns are lifted. All of Seung-ho's preparation work is complete, including the installation of bulletproof glass and high-strength durable doors. He then follows his usual routine of injecting a small dose of poison to hone his resistance capabilities. Following this, he engages in a workout, performing 300 one-arm push-ups while under the influence of the toxin, displaying a work ethic that rivals even the strongest fictional heroes. Seung-ho changes into his combat gear, looking impressive before sharing breakfast with his dog. He waits for the 9 a.m. announcement, briefly dozing off in the process. Suddenly, the hour arrives, and the television turns on. The president sits before the nation to deliver an overwhelming message, declaring martial law and announcing the closure of roads, among other measures. Seung-ho feels moved and impressed by the president's decisions, believing that no other leader could have provided the country with a more dignified conclusion. Witnessing the somber state of the leader, he clutches the remote, struggling to accept the ultimate end. Nevertheless, he acknowledges that this fate cannot be avoided. It is a reality that humanity must endure and survive. However, this time, Seung-ho will not enter the apocalypse as a novice, but as a veteran possessing comprehensive knowledge. 4 hours remain until the spores are scheduled to make contact. He spends 2 of those hours in the alternate dimension, checking on the items farmed and stored in his warehouse. Back in the real world, he sets up the necessary equipment to handle the days following the onset of the Iron Death disease. While he is occupied in the other world, humanity begins to collapse. Chaos runs rampant as civilians fight and harm one another, with general apathy toward order taking hold. In one instance, an overweight man wanders the streets exposing himself, seemingly resigned to death, before being struck by a car and killed. Some individuals appear to enjoy killing others without remorse, confirming that the world is truly coming to an end. The blonde man behind the wheel shows no concern for the pedestrian he just killed. His friend remarks that getting rid of the car is acceptable, reasoning that the Iron Death disease will soon wipe out all vehicles regardless. Another man points his bat toward the rooftop, calling out the person silently spying on them. He harbors a personal grudge against the protagonist and expresses a desire to kill Seung-ho to farm points. Seung-ho is confused by the man's arrogant attitude, but his attention is drawn to flyers falling from the sky. Even on the brink of the apocalypse, the government continues to show concern for its people. Seung-ho finds this altruism amazing, noting the contrast with his own ruthless selfishness regarding personal survival. He realizes that if more people acted in the interest of others, dealing with the apocalypse would be significantly easier. Crushing the paper in his hand, he reflects that this is an unrealistic standard. He resolves to focus solely on returning to his preparations. In the next scene, barely 3 minutes remain until the spores make contact with the world. Seung-ho has collected numerous air tanks, questioning whether the quantity will suffice before the disease takes full control. He has already committed every resupply route within the city to memory. Glancing at his watch, he briefly considers the consequences of forgetting to remove it, but he quickly dismisses the thought, realizing he is worrying excessively. Choosing to keep matters simple, he dons his helmet. As the clock strikes 1 p.m., the spores make contact with the world. Stealing his resolve, Seung-ho kickstarts his motorcycle, hoping his plans will proceed without error. The narrative shifts to the onset of the infection, as the spores begin to affect the general population. Vitality is drained from the victims, leaving behind only flesh-eating corpses. These growling, purplish monsters are instantly attracted to specific sounds. Seung-ho speeds past several zombies, surprised to find that the area is not heavily populated with them. This is fortunate, resulting from the fact that most infected individuals remained indoors, perishing alongside their families. The only aspect that intrigues him is the prospect of finding a survivor who has not turned. Nevertheless, the situation appears manageable. Spotting a clear path, he takes a shortcut, prioritizing the avoidance of zombies while he is focused on gathering resources. Fortunately, the shops still have their shutters secured. This allows him to easily shatter the glass with his sledgehammer, which he proceeds to do before entering. Seung-ho summons the portal, aware that speed is essential. He seizes necessary items, understanding that it will take some time for the spores to establish full mental control over the zombies. His optimal strategy is to raid the hardware store before the zombies can coordinate an assault, thereby avoiding unnecessary combat. Consequently, he tosses everything he can reach into the portal, effectively flooding his dog's vicinity with a massive quantity of medicine. With the pharmacy completely emptied, Seung-ho assesses his progress and realizes he is moving significantly faster than anticipated. However, this assumption is challenged when he arrives at the hardware store and discovers double layers of security measures. He had predicted this obstacle, which is precisely why he brought the tanks. Seung-ho activates the focused heat of the oxygen cutter. A minor problem arises. The equipment is excessively loud and begins to attract nearby zombies. Scanning his surroundings, Seung-ho recalls that although their tracking senses were diminished in the game, they still required only a few moments to locate the source of the noise. An entire horde surrounds him, signaling his potential doom.